Welcome back to the Rodcast. Oh, it is a great day to do sports radio. We got a ton to get into on the show today. We'll start off talking about, of course, one of the most I want to say one of the most exciting games and one of the most exciting performances, maybe I should say, that we've seen in a long time. So we'll get into that coming up. Last night, Caitlin Clark put on the show. She's supposed to be the GOAT, so she's definitely making her case. We'll get into that coming up a little bit later on in this segment. Also, the Astros, finally some good news for the Astros. They get a no-hitter to get their first win of the season. We'll get into that as well and talk about it. We got some NBA news, notes, and nuggets as the season approaches its end, but we're talking about some postseason play. But also, we're going to give some props to the San Antonio Spurs. They're creating a little bit of buzz, so we'll talk a little bit of Spurs with our favorite Spurs fan, my man Patrick Davis. Also, we'll get into some NFL discussion. We'll talk about why the Cowboys are America's team. Also, why the Cowboys once again misread the market, miscalculated the market. I praised this move by the Cowboys, but I think they might have paid too much. Now, in retrospect, we'll get into that and talk about it a little bit later on. Also, there are some player rankings, college football player rankings for the 2024 season that have come out. Pro Football Focus has theirs, ESPN. They seem to be trickling out their player rankings. So we'll review that, see where the Longhorns stand in those national player rankings for 2024. We'll also dive behind the burnt orange curtain a little bit. Matt Miller has a 7-round mock draft. The man's been working hard. You know, I'm a mock slut, so I'll look at anybody's mock draft, but he's one of the best. So we'll talk about where the Longhorns sit in the latest Matt Miller 7-round mock draft. So a lot to get into. We got a ton to talk about on the show. You're the most important part of it, so hit us up on the text line 512-447-3776. Let's not waste any time introducing the real MVP, one of the hardest working members of the ARN family. He's got a hustler spirit, period. I don't know what he's paid. I'm pretty damn sure that he's underpaid. Ain't no 401k for this hustler, and he's a hustle man of many talents. My friend, neighbor, and co-host is Patrick Davis, y'all. What's going on, Patrick?
Oh, it's a Tuesday here in paradise. We got a little rain last night. Just laying down. It's just, getting text about the Astros throwing a no-hitter, and it was excited about that. And then, watching the women's tournament, watching some NBA, getting everything ready for the next day. And then I heard the rain roll in. I was like, perfect. Just go to sleep to the soundtrack of rain and have a good old night. Yeah, it was a good way to do it. Let me introduce my co-host. He is a proud alumni of DBU. He's got more papers than Dunder Mifflin and watches more film than Siskel and Ebert. He is the new Rod father of Austin Sports Radio, Mr. Rod Babers.
I appreciate the intro as always, my man. And Patrick Davis, you can reach him, the Idealionaire, via Twitter at It's Patrick Davis. I'm at Rod Babers in the Twitterverse. Of course, my man Patrick also will get you the Horn headlines here. We'll get into that momentarily. He's excited because we crammed in some Spurs talk, even though the Spurs are not really relevant. But since we're getting to the end of the regular season, we're about to start talking about championship contenders. I thought a little tidbit from Brian Windhorst. So it ain't me, actually. It's a national analyst who's talking about the Spurs. I guess he got some tidbits and some nuggets. So we'll get into that for you Spurs fans out there. We're also going to get into, once my man Patrick gets done with the headlines, we'll dive into the Caitlin Clark performance a little bit and the Raniel Blanco performance for the Astros, because a no-hitter in we'll give you some tidbits about it. It's really interesting for him to have his first no-hitter as well. But the Astros to get their first win of the season with a no-hitter, it's also pretty rare in baseball. So we're going to drop some of those nuggets coming up. So we'll talk some baseball. I know we talked Rangers yesterday, so we're not going to, trust me, boss hard with all Astros talk. They just got their first win of the season, but a no-hitter is considered, that's historic, so we got to give them their props. So before we get to that, my man Patrick is going to hook you up with the Horn headlines to get you informed and updated on all the big topics of the day, and then we'll dive deeper into the big headlines. Patrick, please bless us with the Horn headlines of the day.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. The women's Final Four is set after Caitlin Clark and Iowa were able to top LSU 94-87. Clark scored 41 points, hitting 9 threes to get the win over at the team that beat them for the championship a year ago. And on the other side of the bracket, UConn beat USC 80-73 to reach their record 24th Final Four as a school. With NC State, this is the first time two universities have reached the Final Four in both men's and women's basketball in the same season. Texas baseball is in action tonight against Abilene Christian, a team who has never beaten the Longhorns. The Horns will look to rely on their hot bats to get a win over a team who has suspect pitching this season. In the NBA, the Phoenix Suns topped the New Orleans Pelicans 124-111, with Devin Booker putting up 52 points and 9 assists. The Pelicans' loss helps the Mavericks gain a little bit of breathing room in the standings as they take on the Warriors tonight in their push for the 4 seed in the West. Texas men's basketball as their first player into the transfer portal as redshirt sophomore Gavin Perryman announced his plans to be a grad transfer this offseason. Perryman walked on to Texas in 2021 and has appeared in 11 games in his 2 seasons on the team. And in the NBA and the MLB, Ronel Blanco powered the Astros to their first win of the season, pitching the first no-hitter of the season against the Blue Jays. The 30-year-old Blanco was only pitching in his 8th career start when he entered the record books with the Astros' 17th no-hitter in history. The Rangers continued their hot start as they beat the Rays 9-3, with Adolis Garcia getting his 100th career home run in the win. The Rangers will send Andrew Haney to the mound today with pregame starting at 5:15 right here on the Horn. That is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. I guess start with the Astros and the historic no-hitter for Ronel Blanco. I love all these little factoids, excuse me, that come out about no-hitter. You brought up the fact that it was for him. It was basically he had. I don't know if you brought this up or not, but he had never started. He had never pitched a complete game, and he had never gone past 6 innings. Actually,
yeah,
he was making just his 8th start. I believe you said that in the Horn headlines with the update there. How about this little factor? I love this. It is the earliest no-hitter. If you just look at the date of it in the baseball season, it is the earliest no-hitter in Major League Baseball history.
Yeah, I mean, it's
no-hitter this early.
It's game 4, so that's not surprising.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Well, exactly. Well, yeah, you're right. It's not surprising, but it is, like I said, historic. It is pretty cool. That little factoid that it is the earliest no-hitter ever. And I saw that if you look at it, it is also historic from the standpoint. See, I lost my factoid here. Oh, yeah, here you go. Joe Espada is the first manager in Major League Baseball history to collect the first win of his managerial career via a no-hitter, which is also pretty damn cool for him. So Ronel Blanco making his first opening day roster this season at 28 years old, by the way, which is also one of those cool things you only see in baseball. He didn't play in the majors until he was 28 years old. And he's, like you said, making just his 8th start. The only reason he's making that start is because Justin Verlander and Jose Urquidy is dealing with injuries. And he ends up, making history. He had 2 walks. The 2 walks were both to George Springer. One to start the game and basically one to end the game. He had one in the 9th with 2 outs in the 9th, and he had one basically to start out the game at the beginning of the game against George Springer. Those were his only 2 walks. He was really, really efficient, and they get the 10-0 win over Toronto. So,
yeah. There was a play with 1 out in the 9th where Jose Abreu had to go and make a diving catch, and then threw it to first on his butt, and that was able to get in the 2nd. And then he walked Springer after that with a little bit of, where you could tell he was a little bit nervous at that point because he is 1 out away from, it's a lot to not be able to make the roster, kind of be on and off a roster all season long, be told that you're probably never gonna really be an MLB player. You're still doing well. I mean, to make it to the level he's made it to is still doing well, but to probably never be that level and then come out and not only pitch a complete game in Major League Baseball, which is difficult enough, to not only get a win, but then to pitch a no-hitter 4 games into a season, get the first win after a bad start against the Yankees, and get all of that. It's just a really impressive stat. And it was one of those ones where you weren't really expecting anything from the Astros this early on. It doesn't solve any of the Astros problems. The 10 runs is probably a better news for Astros fans for the long term, but definitely a huge accomplishment for Blanco, which you love to see for those guys. But it's what the Astros have done for years and years, which is that scouting and the trying to find pitching cheap and basically, add into Framber Valdez and Jose Urquidy and Luis Garcia and all those guys that they kind of find out of nowhere that their scouting department has just been really good at finding. And you just found the right guy on the right night for Blanco last night.
Yeah, no, good point about that, because the Astros, if you go look at it, the Astros have 6 no-hitters since 2019. This includes postseason play too, and no other team has more than 2 in that span. That according to Baseball Reference. To your point about the Astros stockpiling on pitching and being able to have a really good eye for pitching, but that was a phenomenal performance, and like you said, nobody expected it. Came out of nowhere. I mean, he had never pitched a complete game, never going past 6 innings, and just goes out there and puts on a hell of a show. So really good performance, and the Astros needed that good mojo because they started out the season in abysmal fashion for against the Yankees. All right, so we'll get back to some baseball discussion, but yeah, the Astros get their first win of the season. I haven't said it all season, but go Stros. Gonna say it. There you go.
There you go.
I hadn't even got it out there yet. Let's talk about
that much of a reason.
I had much of a reason. Yeah, exactly. That'd just been homerism, just throwing that out there. I mean, come on now. They hadn't looked good at all, but Ronnie Blanco obviously pulls out a great performance there for the Astros to give them their first win. Caitlin Clark pulls out an amazing performance as well. It was, like I said, if you got a chance to watch it, you're a basketball guy. So did you watch more of I know you were watching a lot of NBA too. Did you watch more of the Iowa LSU game, or did you watch more NBA? Did you find yourself drawn into it?
No, I watch more NBA, but Caitlin Clark was playing really well. But it's still not the level of play of. It's just not my favorite thing to watch. I get why people enjoy it. I don't really watch sports for off the court drama very often. It doesn't. That's not why I watch sports.
I understand.
So I get all that. I watched. You saw early on in the game. I would flip back to it, and you see how early on that LSU was playing really, really trying to play tight defense on Caitlin Clark and trying to, just out hustle and out effort. They had bigger players. They had faster players in LSU. So they were pushing really hard early on. And then Caitlin Clark, I mean, I don't know why you didn't just shadow her to her left the entire game. And I get she can dribble and she can get assist and pass, but that to the left 3-point shot where she would just basically take a dribble to the left,
drip, and then no step,
and then jump in and hit a 3-pointer. The amount of times she did that, and I'm like, I would literally just go, no, go right, drive to your right. I get it. You want to drive to your right. I'll give you to the right, because if I lead you inside, we have people inside that can block your shot.
Got size.
We have size inside.
Angel Reese, you got size. Yeah.
I'm just not going to let you shoot this same 3 that you hit, I think 6 of against us. Like 6 of them they hit. That I would not allow that. But I get it's hard when you're playing against someone who is, elite at the game and the best shooter probably. It's her and then Ionesca. Who was in the 3-point shootout with Steph Curry this year, who was before that was the best 3-point shooter. Now Caitlin Clark has been the best 3-point shooter. It's hard to guard those kind of players because you think I'm going to guard you like I've guarded every single other person in my entire playing career, and that should be enough. But it's not against players like that.
No, you're right. I mean, they won 94-87. And she was responsible. She had 41 points scored, made 9 3-pointers, had 12 assists. She was responsible for 73 points of their 94 points in terms of either she scored or assisted on. So I mean, they tried everything and didn't really work. And LSU is a formidable opponent, to say the least. They faced them. Obviously, it's a rematch of last year's national title game, but she put on the show. And you're right. I don't know. I mean, if you're a technical basketball person and you're a basketball junkie like you are, I don't necessarily know if it appeals to you. It appeals because it is kind of the Caitlin Clark show at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, she is a kind of phenomenon into herself. She's just fun to watch. Not necessarily from a basketball perspective, but just watching her as she's just really kind of a pioneer of a different brand of basketball for basically has captivated the country for women, and it's taken women's basketball to a whole nother level. The ratings are higher for women's basketball than they've ever been. Like, this is the peak, the zenith of women's basketball right now. I hope they take advantage of it. I was doing some research. So how about this? I got these numbers just to kind of show they call it the Caitlin Clark effect. Call it whatever you want to. But women's basketball, the numbers have kind of shifted. The viewership is up we're talking about these Sweet 16 games on ESPN here, up 32% from last year. Despite the fact that last year's 4-game slate featured Iowa, LSU, those teams obviously were still in it at this point. It said also here, if you look at last year's NCAA women's basketball tournaments, the ratings hit historical highs. And they believe that Iowa and Caitlin Clark were a big part of that. The Hawkeyes' first 2 tournament games this season averaged 4.1 million viewers. 4.1, nearly 5 times last year's average, which also hit peaks. Also, if you go look at the 2 largest audiences ever for women's tournament games outside the Final Four, Iowa's narrow escape of West Virginia and their opening round blowout of Holy Cross averaged 3.2 million and 4.9 million viewers. Just to give you perspective on that, which how wild that is, I believe NBA playoff games on average get you about 5.5 to 6 million viewers. Like just on average. Now it's not the big time games. It's not when LeBron's playing or Steph's playing, but just on average in 2023, they was trying to average viewership. These are some monster ratings or monster viewership numbers for women's basketball. And like I said, a lot of it's being attributed to Caitlin Clark and her mass appeal.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said of, I think that this is something that people are having a little bit easier time watching with their families, where you can sit down and tune into this, where it's a sporting event where, we kind of saw it somewhat with the Chiefs and Taylor Swift of, okay, well, we can sit down and all watch this as a family, as opposed to maybe just dad or mom or whoever just watching the game by themselves, kind of bringing in everybody in the family and watch them together. I think that's helped them out. But it is. I mean, people want to see generational talents. At the end of the day, that's something that people always want to see. And when you see Caitlin Clark play, just if you watch points of the first half to points of the second half, where in the first half they were really starting to slow her down a lot more. And it looked like, okay, I don't know if she's going to be able to step up into the moment. And by the second half, it was
third quarter.
Yeah, it was blatantly obvious that she could step into the moment and be a star player. I don't know what it was exactly said, but I believe that she made the point that she was going to come out and be a force in the second half, and they just had no answer. And so it's fun to watch people like that, especially if you don't necessarily have, any skins in the game. If you're not watching and your team's not in it, you're not necessarily overly mad. I don't know if there's a dislike for a ton of those teams where, an Iowa team, it really wasn't a powerhouse before Caitlin Clark. That's also kind of what's fun about this year's Final Four is you got to see a USC and an Iowa that I know I was in the championship game last year, but without Caitlin Clark, this has not been a powerhouse team. Yeah, exactly. And without Juju Watkins on USC, that has not been a powerhouse women's basketball team either. Normally you see South Carolina's and UConn's, of course, LSU has been really good. Baylor was good when Mulkey was there as well. So you kind of see the same teams in there every year. So there's been a little bit of new blood in there as well, which I think people enjoy seeing. So there is a lot of factors, but at the end of the day, as much as I think LSU and Angel Reese got to play the foil to it, it is really about Caitlin Clark and her generational talent. But I mean, watching Angel Reese, there was a period right before the first half ended where she had like 9 or 10 points in a row.
Oh yeah,
and was just making steals, making blocks, and was just using her size and athleticism to be able to take the game over. And so you saw it on both ends where there was that worthy foil. And again, the game was not as close as the score was at the end of that game.
No,
they basically, it was down to free throws. Iowa made some dumb turnovers. There was a 3 that Caitlin Clark fouled the shooter and she hit the 3 and then missed the free throw, and then LSU got the rebound to put it back into a single digit game. But at the end of the day, in reality, it was just Caitlin Clark in that second half told you that she was not going to be beat.
It's amazing though that, because I agree with you about she's a generational talent that helps, but I also think there's a confluence of factors here that's really helping. Honestly, LSU being a villain helps. It always helps to have a villain. The storyline writes itself here. And in the country that is, we are divided in a lot of ways. It helps because different sides, and I'm not going to get into all that. You can pick different sides. Hell, the White House was commenting on this last year, right? So whatever you like Iowa, you like LSU, whatever it is, it helps to have the villain and then you can naturally have your hero, whoever it may be, because some people believe Caitlin Clark's a villain
Yeah.
in their world, right? And they look at it, right? So that also helps. NIL is huge here. It's really I think pumping up women's sports. It's given a new vitality to women's sports now, because they are valued in a different way in the NIL world than I think we have perceived before. So I think that's all. I mean, how many of those damn commercials had Caitlin Clark in if you were watching the game?
Yeah.
I mean, and she's got like 11, I think 12 NIL endorsements. She's got a ton of them. That I think that also helps with it. But it's interesting. And I know she's like you said, generational talent. I mean, she's in the conversation to be the GOAT, the greatest women's basketball player of all time. She's got to win a title though. She'll probably still be considered the GOAT in women's basketball if she doesn't win the title. But man, you talk about the cherry on top of the legacy.
Well, yeah,
to leave like that on top after winning, and then you'd have to take down the likes of UConn or something like that to do it. And by the way, that is also a storyline here. I want to get this in real quick because I know you got a great point that you always do have. Real quick, apparently, like all I imagine women's basketball stars coming out in high school, she wanted to be a UConn Husky. And apparently, like that was part of her dream coming up, that she wanted to play for the Huskies. And reportedly, the Huskies never came calling. Here's an excerpt from a story about her. She said they said letters from college coaches stacked up at her house in those days when she was being recruited. Her parents kept them from her until late in the process, trying to instinctively protect her as much as they could. Her dream school, like everyone else, UConn. She was growing up and learning for the first time about being watched and about reputation. A lot of college coaches watch the same body language sequences that other coaches observed. Most didn't mind. They said she waited for Geno Smith and UConn to call, waited for a letter. Geno never came. There you go. So apparently she wanted to be a UConn Husky.
And for the
never
record,
happened. So add a storyline.
Yeah,
there.
Best thing that ever could have happened to her. Because if she goes to UConn, she doesn't have a green light. She's not allowed to shoot like she shoots. And maybe by her senior year, she gets a little bit more of a green light, but she's not the Caitlin Clark we know, because that's not what UConn does. UConn is a very much fundamental basketball team. They like to do things the way that you're supposed to be, because your odds of winning go up if you have 7 All-Americans. I mean, UConn does it because UConn plays, I think, 5 players for 90% of the game. But if you have 5 All-Americans on your team and they all play fundamental basketball, you're going to win a lot of games. And that's what UConn's done. And I don't think they would say, okay, just take these off-balance three-pointers from 5 feet behind the three-point line. I don't know if that would be allowed for her to be doing for the last couple of years. So it's really good that didn't. But this is a UConn team where, if you want to talk about the powerhouse basketball programs, we said that there's been this is the first year that 2 teams are in the women's and men's Final Four. It's the first time that's ever happened. But UConn has been it. UConn has done it, I believe, 4 or 5 times, and they've won both titles twice before in the same year. So this is not anything new for UConn. This is what they do at UConn. So this is, I think, if you want to say the storybook ending for a Caitlin Clark career, to be able to knock off this UConn team, that this is their 24th women's Final Four. Like, that is a ridiculous number. Just what they've been able to put together. They were on the early edge of being able to put it, together as many All-Americans you could. There's, of course, Caitlin Clark wanted to go there, because that was, if you went to UConn, you could win championships. And if you went anywhere else, you could play against UConn for the championship. And that was kind of what it felt like for a long time in women's basketball. But if she can knock them off, if she can, go prove herself at that she's a generational talent that took in Iowa that's never been that powerhouse team all the way against this team. And then you add in, the story, everybody loves that story of they didn't see me and I'm proving them wrong, because everybody in their own lives feels they've been slighted at a point and someone didn't give them an opportunity. So we can all get on board with that, story. But at the same part, it'll be fun to watch if she can do this again, where the moment in the second half was not too big for her. And in the second half of that game against LSU, she became, once again, that generational talent that you don't know if you will ever see somebody in women's basketball do what she did at that level.
Yeah. Nobody's going to play the game. Nobody has played the game like she has played it
And there's no one in line to do it
That.
next.
Yeah, it could happen now just because she's inspired now, probably a generation
but
of
there's no one that's sitting behind and say, well, that'll be the next
yes.
Caitlin Clark. That is not a
Yes,
thing
because
right
that'll
now.
be because she's, exactly like kind of how Steph has inspired a generation of players who just want to now take logo 3-pointers and they all believe they're Steph Curry.
But there's still no other Steph Curry, and he's in his 30s now. He's been around for a minute.
Amen. Amen to that, brother. Yeah, and I'm with you. I don't think there will be another Caitlin Clark in a long time. She is, captivated really sports fans and non-sports fans. She's kind of transitioned from the sports page to the front page. That's something that's really, really tough to do. And she's bringing women's basketball with her. We just talked about Ice Cube offering her $5 million to play in the Big 3 league. And we both agreed she should do it. We both agreed the WNBA should let her do it. There's only 2 games where it conflicts, and they should let her do it because it promotes the game. It promotes women's basketball. There are going to be some audiences that go watch the Big 3, but yes, those will also be audiences that are inspired to go watch more WNBA. I'm not saying I'm going to watch WNBA games because Caitlin Clark is playing, but I will say we probably talked more about women's basketball during the Caitlin Clark era than we ever have.
Did you hear Kenyon Martin? Did you hear Kenyon Martin on his opinion of Caitlin Clark in the Big 3?
Oh no, what did he say?
He said the Big 3 is a step away from prison ball. She can't be in there because they're just going to ISO her and post her up every single play.
It's prison ball. That's a great, oh man, that's fantastic.
He's like, no, you don't understand. These guys will not care that she is a girl. And like, they will just go, okay, I'm just going to post you up every time you try and guard me. I will elbow you in the head. I will push you out of the way. I'm physically bigger and stronger than you.
Dude, I think Battle of the Sexes also great storyline. I mean, come on, we watched that at the NBA 3-point contest, right? With Steph.
Yeah.
And the WNBA player, she was great. She's what's her name? I always screw it up.
It's Ionescu, I believe.
Ionescu. Yeah, I always mess it up. But it was really compelling. So I think another kind of this is kind of a play on the Battle of the Sexes thing. As long as you got a storyline around Caitlin Clark, I think people will watch. And I think that's what you don't want to lose. She goes to WNBA, she loses all the storylines, really. Right? A lot of all the storylines found. Right now in college, storylines are good because you got villains that she's going up against, like LSU, and then you got UConn, as you described, taking down powerhouse dynastic program to add to her legacy. She's changing the game. You have all these things that are adding to it. And the Big 3, that's why I think go WNBA, but play in the Big 3 league. Do it. Even if for a few exhibition games. Yeah. Don't play a whole season if you don't want to. Play 2-3 games. Say, man, I'll give you 2-3 games. Yeah. All right. You pay me $1 million a game. All right, there you go. So you make it easy on it. Whatever it may be, if you don't want to play a whole season. But I think she should do it because I don't want the buzz to die for women's basketball. Yeah. And then it'll all die out with her pretty much going and being not irrelevant, but she won't have the storylines that are so captivating and compelling with her. Around her. All right. Yeah. Good conversation there. All right. We come back. We'll get into some of Texas football conversation. There are all these college football player rankings coming out for 2024. ESPN has a few of theirs for quarterback, wide receiver, pass rusher, and DBs. Pro Football Focus has theirs for every position. We'll dive into it. The Longhorns are getting some love among the best players in college football. I am my man, Matt Miller, who also is a Longhorn fan, but also a great draft analyst. He has his 7-round. Yeah, I said it, 7-round mock draft. I'm a mock slut, so I went deep down that rabbit hole. We'll talk about what Longhorns are being discussed and what Longhorns are being projected to be drafted in his 7-round mock draft. All of that and more when we return. This is the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis coming right back on the Horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to go behind the burnt orange curtain and talk some Texas football. We got into Texas spring practice nuggets yesterday, and I believe the Longhorns are practicing today. So we'll have some more of those coming up tomorrow. But I want to get into these player rankings. ESPN and Pro Football Focus are coming out with their college football player rankings. ESPN did their top 10 at certain positions. They did pass rusher, quarterback, pass catcher, and they also did defensive back. I think they've done running back too, but the Longhorns were actually mentioned and featured on 4 of those 5 player rankings. And Pro Football Focus did their entire player rankings, but only did 5 at every position. And there are a couple of Longhorns who get some love there. So let's start with the Pro Football Focus rankings because you have fewer Longhorns that are honored on that list of top 5. In their quarterbacks, they have Quinn Ewers as a top 5 quarterback. They got him in number 5. Now, this is based on Pro Football Focus rankings and scores and their ratings. So obviously they got their own criteria, but they got Carson Beck at number 1, Dylan Gabriel, the second best quarterback, then Jalen Muro, then Shadur Sanders, and then Quinn Ewers. I think Quinn Ewers is a better quarterback than Jalen Muro. We'll see. Jalen Muro ended the season looking really good, but against Texas, Jalen Muro was a bit underwhelming. Shadur Sanders is the real deal, but I don't know. I think I'd take Quinn as a quarterback over Jalen Muro. I think Jalen Muro's a better athlete than probably damn near anybody on that list overall. I don't know if he's the pocket passing quarterback that I'd like, but he definitely is a playmaker at the position. There's no doubt about that. I was shocked actually that they didn't run more design runs with him against Texas last year. I believe they only had 3 design runs by Jalen Muro last year. Yeah. He just looked. My first impression of Jalen Muro wasn't great, and I know at the end of the season, I watched him. He was a much better player in that brand new system that he was running to.
I know, but again, the top 3 guys on that list all have new coaches.
That is very true.
Because Carson Beck and Dalen Gabriel transferred, so we will see how they do in their new places. Or Carson Beck didn't transfer.
Carson Beck didn't transfer.
No, sorry. I'm not Carson Beck.
Dylan Gabriel.
Dylan Gabriel transferred, and then Jalen Milroe, Kalen DeBoer.
Kalen DeBoer is the new offense. Yeah, you're right about that. There's no doubt. You're right. And I believe Shadur Sanders has a new OC.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, remember Dion hired a new OC there as well. So great point about that. You're right. In terms of continuity and consistency, Quinn may have an advantage on those guys other than Carson Beck. Since we'll stay with quarterbacks, we might as well just go over to ESPN's quarterback rankings. In their quarterback rankings, they actually also had Carson Beck as the top QB in their QB rankings, which shouldn't be totally surprising. But I mean, we start looking at it right now. Texas is going to have a showdown with the best quarterback, arguably in the country, when they play. And that's a great opportunity for Quinn Ewers. I mean, especially with those rosters, pretty much every scout in the NFL is going to be, or at least some NFL team. Every NFL team will send some scout down there to watch that game just because of the rosters alone. But if you're Quinn Ewers and you want to solidify yourself as the top quarterback coming out in that quarterback class, that would be a really good time to do it. It probably will be between Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck and Shadur Sanders as the top QBs coming out in the NFL draft. But ESPN's rankings, they have a little bit different. They do have Carson Beck as number 1. They got Dylan Gabriel as number 2. So they're really high on Dylan Gabriel as well. And then they got Quinn Ewers as number 3. So they're a little higher on Quinn. They got Quinn ahead of Jalen Muro, which, like I said, I would have Quinn ahead of Jalen Muro too. And then they have the quarterback Noah Fafita from Arizona at 5. Jackson Dart at 6. Jalen Daniels from Kansas at 7. They got Shadur Sanders pretty low at 8. I think that's a little low for Shadur Sanders. Should be higher than that. Cameron Rising at 9. Then they got Cameron Ward, the transfer to Miami, at number 10. Yeah, Shadur Sanders probably should be a little bit higher on that list, but ESPN higher on Quinn. They got him as a top 3 quarterback on their rankings.
And we can mention on that one too that Shadur Sanders and Quinn Ewers fall into, and Dylan Gabriel to an extent too, fall into new conferences as well.
Great point. Yeah. And so up the competition level for both of those guys too.
Yeah.
Concerning both of them expected to take a leap. Yeah, great point about that. I agree with you. Going back to the other Longhorn that is mentioned or featured in the Pro Football Focus player rankings, they have Kelvin Banks is the other Longhorn who gets some love here. They have Kelvin Banks as their second best offensive tackle in the country behind Will Campbell of the LSU Tigers. Jonah Manaim of USC is the third best offensive tackle based on Pro Football Focus rankings. So they're really, really high on Kelvin Banks. ESPN, I have not seen their offensive line rankings. I'll keep trying to figure it out. I think they've been kind of piecemealing things out, but I will do my best to try to corral as much of the ESPN rankings as I can. But the other rankings for ESPN that are out there, they rank their wide receivers, and they showed Isaiah Bond some love. They gave Isaiah Bond the ranking as the number 10 overall receiver in their receiver rankings. It really was pass catcher, so that's the way they put it. But most of them receivers. I think there's one tight end on here, and actually Texas will face that tight end. I think it's Colston Loveland is the only tight end on here, I believe. But the other pass catchers are wide receivers, and the Longhorns won't face any of these guys. They got the number one wide receiver, Luther Burden, the Missouri wide receiver, is really, really good. But Texas won't face any of these guys. They got McMillan, the Arizona wide receiver, at number 2. They got Ema Ekbuka, the Ohio State. Mika Egbuka, the Ohio State receiver, at number 3. They got Tess Johnson, Oregon, at number 4. So Texas won't face any of the what ESPN, what they actually project as the top 10 wide receivers in the country. They won't face any of those guys except for that tight end from Michigan. And I think Texas should be able to hold their own there. If you look at pass rushers, they also rank the top 10 best pass rushers for the college football season for 2024. And ESPN has, man, I was a little surprised by this. They have Trey Moore as the third best pass rusher in the country based on their rankings here. Coming off a 14 sacks, 17 and a half tackle for loss season in 2023. If that is the case, Patrick, and he ends up being the third best pass rusher, and this is also what I thought was interesting. We've talked about how deep Texas is on the edges. They're really deep on the edges. They also have an others receiving votes category here at the bottom once they're done with the top 10. And Texas has 2 players actually on the others receiving votes. They have Anthony Hill Jr. They give him some love in others receiving votes. He got 10 of them, others receiving votes. This is based on a voting system, so I didn't give you that breakdown because I didn't want to bore you half to death. But they have Baron Sorrell also listed among the others also receiving votes here. So it kind of echoes our opinion and sentiment that the Longhorns are really deep on the edges now. You bring in Trey Moore, you got a young Colin Simmons there, you got Ethan Burke, you got Baron Sorrell. Those guys are expected to take a huge leap forward in 2024. And then you use Anthony Hill on the edge situationally as well, so you can add him to the mix situationally. And we ain't even start talking about guys like Justice Finkley and others players who also can be in a more supportive role and be able to contribute. They're really deep on the edges, and this national story from ESPN also indicates they believe that's the case.
Yeah, I think it looks as, bringing in Trey Moore, getting Colin Simmons, this looks like it's a point of emphasis for Texas this season is trying to pick up that pass rush, trying to pick up the edge rushing, because, and we know part of the problem of, building a team is your secondary and edge rushers were just not where they need to be last season. They've been trying to address both of those, but both of those attack the same thing, which is trying to slow down a passing game. And if you can't completely overhaul your secondary in one season and bring in more and more guys there, the more pass rush you get, the more you're helping your secondary as well. That'll be a big piece for this Texas team. But yeah, I was surprised to see Trey Moore that high as well. I love to see it. I love to see outside people drinking the burnt orange Kool-Aid as well, because sometimes it feels like, okay, we're going to say really big on Trey Moore, but you see his size and you're not sure. There's always the jump of, you're great UTSA. Can you be great in the SEC now at Texas? That's going to be a huge leap of who you're going to be playing against. But I think when you add in the factors of how many other pieces are going to be on that D line and how many other things you have to now watch out for, that it could help Trey Moore more, that he is going to be part of a unit that he is not the main threat, or even if he is the main threat, there's so many other threats around him that you cannot double team him as much as you'd like to. And I think you're especially see early in the season, most of these SEC teams are not going to try and double team on him until he proves at the SEC level that he can go and attack the quarterback on one-on-one.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And that means he's going to be able to get some easy. Well, honestly, if you're watching film on him, even going back to his time at UTSA, and maybe you're going to see if he can prove it at the next level, at a higher level. But man, he's a natural pass rusher. He's got natural bend. His BGO, his first step are elite. And he doesn't look like the rest of the Texas defensive ends because the edges from Texas, you can tell they're recruiting length. They got certain body types. Look at Ethan Burke. Look at Colton Vosick, Colin Simmons. They got certain body types they're recruiting now at those defensive ends, those edges. But man, he's the best natural pass rusher probably on campus right now. He and Anthony Hill.
Yeah.
And that's why they mentioned Harold Perkins in that article too for ESPN. That's one of the better edge defenders. I think he's like 6 or 7 on that list. And Anthony Hill and he are very similar. And Texas is going to have a similar conundrum, a similar, really a riddle to solve, which is how do you utilize a guy that versatile? Do you leave him in one spot, let him master one position and then move him around? Or do you start to move him around early, just let him learn multiple spots? And then based on the matchup, based on situations, you decide exactly how you want to weaponize him from down to down. I think that's the way you probably should go. It looks like that's the way they're starting, but it depends on all the other pieces you have on defense too. Can you stabilize? Can you have enough stable, competent, capable defenders in those other spots when you start moving him around where there's not significant drop off and it's not a void or a weakness? You move him and they go, well, they're weak right there. Let's attack the off ball linebacker spot. They moved him on the edge. So I think that's going to be key too. Do you have the supporting cast that makes the flexibility of Anthony Hill, which makes it a true weapon, because you can't weaponize the flexibility and versatility if you don't have the other pieces there around him.
Yeah,
that's going to be the key.
That's it. Is Anthony Hill's ceiling this season is based on what that linebacker room can do to fulfill all the other places where he doesn't need to be a every single down middle linebacker because you just don't have another option. If they can figure that part out, if they get other guys to step up there, then I think that he jumps up to your number one most dangerous pass rusher over Trey Moore. But that's if the team can fill the hole at linebacker in every other spot.
Yep, totally agree with you. That's exactly right. That's why watching Leon Lafau, David Bender, the only 6th-year senior on the team, by the way, he's the old man on the team right now. Be huge if he can have one of those breakout seasons for the Longhorns. All right, one other ranking here for ESPN. They rank the best DBs in college football for 2024 season. Shout out to Andrew McCuba. They show him some love. They got him as the 9th best defensive back in the country based on their ratings. He's just above Jabbar Muhammad. Remember, Texas recruited Jabbar Muhammad in the transfer portal from Washington. They saw him too. He ended up going to Oregon, but remember, Texas could have had 9 and 10 potentially on this list. Remember, he's kinfolk of Malik Muhammad. At the top of this list, they actually have someone Texas will see. They had Malachi Starks, the Georgia defensive back, and they'll see him, and they'll see Will Johnson from Michigan, who's the 3rd ranked defensive back on this list. So Quinn Ewers will see some of the best DBs in the country on the 2024 schedule. But Andrew McCuba included on that list. They also have others receiving votes, and they show some love to Jahdae Barron in the others receiving votes category. They got Jahdae Barron on there as well. So that's, I think, good news for the Longhorns. At least they're getting some love. I said the defensive backfield should be a strength. And nationally, it looks like they think that Andrew McCuba, Jahdae Barron should be the leaders in that secondary, and I totally agree. But looking at it, I will say this too about that secondary, and you talked about it. It's going to be, a lot of it will be based on the symbiotic relationship that exists between that pass rush and that coverage, right? Can they cover just a little bit longer, cover a little bit tighter, shrink those passing windows a little bit more, and then now you have not elite, I can't say that yet. You have high upside edge defenders, really high upside edge defenders who can now collapse the pocket just a half a second quicker and make the quarterback uncomfortable enough where he'll make an inaccurate throw through it in a really small passing window, and you get your hands on more footballs. So if it's working together like that, then all these additions they're bringing in, Trey Moore, the Colin Simmons, the Andrew Makuba, it'll all pay off for that Texas defense, the pass defense more than anything. Actually,
Yes.
the rush defense was one of the best in the country last year. The pass defense has been shaky.
Yeah, and you got to
Been
step about
shaky.
that, and then you just got to get that interior D line to fill the hole of Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy in the run defense. Make sure that's still there. But again, the run defense is going to go into those other linebackers we talked about a minute ago. And if those
hole.
other linebackers can still step up in the run game, and you get a couple other guys, we don't need you to pass rush at all. Anthony Hill will pass rush at linebacker. We just need you to be able to make sure that anyone trying to get through a hole, you can identify it. You can go down and snuff that out. If you can do those types of things, man, that defense could be dangerous.
Yeah, no, that's the big question. How do you replace the best D tackle duo in college football? The best run stopper and the best pass rushing D tackle in college football. How do you just replace that in one off season? We'll see. That's why they're paid the big bucks. All right, good conversation there. We'll get back to that Matt Miller 7-round mock draft, and also there's a Jay Witt interview I want to get into next time we go behind the burnt orange curtain. So we'll do that coming up later in the show. But on the other side, big fat poll of the day from my man Patrick Davis, and we'll also hear what the musically themed day of the week is right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn, Rod Babers here. Let me tell you about our friends over at Callahan General Store. As a matter of fact, we'll have Charlie Wilson on tomorrow, the CEO and general manager of Callahan General Store. He'll come on for At the Turn. Him and Omar Uresti. We always have a good time talking golf on the show, but also I get those lawn tips from my man Charlie, and I always love that too. But as we're talking about golf, don't you want your lawn to be a golf course condition type lawn? Don't you want it to be one that's plush and green and healthy this time of year, especially with spring upon us? You want your lawn to look award winning. At least that I do. That's what I want. And my friends at Callahan's, they can help you out with that. They have all the resources and they have all the advice that you need. As a matter of fact, that's what we love to ask Charlie about when he comes on the show. And he always gives us great instructions on how to start the process of getting your lawn beautiful and lush and in golf course condition. You want to start with the pre-emergence. You put that down, and that's going to kill those initial weeds. And you can get that in the Barricade product from Nitro Foss, or they got other products there as well. But then once that's down, you get your weed and feed. I'm in the process now. I put the weed and feed already down, so I'm halfway through this thing, and the yard looks great, but there are some patches there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over to Callahan's, get some Bermuda seed, fill in those patches that were damaged by sun or the winter freezes, whatever it may be, and then we're going to start to see even more growth in the yard, and that's what you want, folks. And after that, I'll head on over to Callahan's. You can get your soil there as well. You can get your amendments, you can get your special fertilizers, whatever you need to keep your lawn in beautiful, lush, and healthy looking condition. And if you really want to test your green thumb, you're starting to plant those vegetables, you're starting to plant some trees, you really want to spruce things up, you can get all that at Callahan's as well. Your native pecan trees, your fruit trees, you can get that at Callahan's. Your peppers, your tomatoes, your melons, other plants to choose from, that's all at Callahan's General Store, folks. And they also have great advice, all right, on what to do to take care of your lawn. And don't forget also at Callahan's General Store, they got all the feed you need for big animals and small. They got all the feed and food you need there as well. So go stop by Callahan's General Store. They are the number one spot to make sure that your lawn is looking like it is in golf course condition, award winning, folks. Callahan's General Store, right there at 501 Bastrop Highway between downtown and the airport. Every day is a great day to make it a Callahan's day.
Back on the Rodcast here on a Tuesday morning. It is a top of the charts Tuesday where I'll play you songs that were number one hits on this day in history. Reach it to the top of the Billboard charts. We go along every Tuesday and do that. It's one of the days that I have to think the least and do more research and think the less. It's because there's a certain selection of songs you can choose from on that. So it makes it a little bit easier. All right, guys, it is time for the big fat poll of the day. I do need your help on this one because I was thinking about it last night.
Nice.
I was thinking about this last night, but I know you guys are going to have other suggestions that I did not think of. So I do want to get your opinion on the text line, 512-447-3776 for the big fat poll of the day.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on the Horn.
Watching Iowa versus LSU last night and knowing that the stories have come out now that there was hit pieces, as some would say, that came out on Kim Mulkey. But being a Big 12 basketball fan and everything else, that Kim Mulkey is one of the easiest to dislike coaches in probably coaching history. Yeah. And I think she would tell you that she is one of the easiest to dislike coaches in coaching history. Yeah, and that's part of what she does. So it was making me thinking about the coaches that you want to root against the most. Coaches that when you see them, it's not just that you're playing against them. It's not just, well, I don't like this team, so I want the coach to lose. But coaches who maybe went to different places and you were like, I don't like them there. The example I'll give you, Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma, and you said, I don't want Lincoln Riley to win. And then he posts a picture of barbecue, and you think, I really don't like this guy. Look at the pictures he's posting. I don't like. And then he goes to USC, and you're like, we're not playing USC. I should have no bones in the game, but I'm going to root against Lincoln Riley. I just don't want this guy to win. And just the whole, his whole demeanor, everything. We just say he's an easy to root against guy. Yeah, if you're not rooting for him, it's a lot easier to root against him. John Calipari at Kentucky is one of those guys who's pretty easy to root against.
Lane Kiffin is easy to root against.
Lane Kiffin. It's a great name.
He's like Lane Kiffin. I think Lane Kiffin is actually a good coach. But oh man, every time I just root for Lane Kiffin to get beat a lot. And I actually like Lane Kiffin, which is weird. I think he's funny on social media. I think he's a good coach. But he just does some things where I'm like, man, I hope you get. No, I just hope somebody beats you.
That's a perfect example of what I mean, though, because it is the guy where you go, this is not about respect or anything else. This is solely the fact that every time I try and go, you know what? Maybe it's on me. Maybe it's my problem that I don't like this guy. It's not. Then he goes to a bar and hits on a girl under the name Joey Freshwater, and you're like, yes, dude, this is why. This is why.
There you go. I'm like, man, maybe it's me. Why am I so hard on Lane Kiffin? He gives me a reason to hate him again. I'm like, no, I just wish to root against him. I should say, not to hate, to root against him. There you go.
So let me know.
I like that.
Let me know on the text line, 512-447-3776. And it can be any sport. It can be any sport that you want to go with, in college or pro. It's just a coach. We got like Bill Belichick is one that I get. It's easy to root against Bill Belichick. Again, he's a winner, and winners are usually easier. And then a guy who wins and then mumbles at the press conference.
Got caught cheating multiple times. That also helps. No, that's a good one, though. Yeah, because anytime you get to dynastic status, everybody starts to root against you.
Yeah,
I mean, that's gonna happen to Andy Reid pretty soon. And he wins 3 in a row. Everybo's gonna be like, man, I'm rooting against Andy Reid at this point.
And that's the thing too, is I'm not even saying you hate this person or anything. You're just rooting against him. You just say, I just want your night to be a little bit worse than mine. That's all. I don't want you to win anymore. You don't need to win anymore in life. I felt you've won enough. So let's stop the winning for you.
Yeah. That somebody who didn't win a lot that people still rooted against.
Who's that?
Weirdly. Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah.
Because good looking and he would always fail forward. Like he'd get fired and then get hired for the NFL job. And it's like, how do you get fired at Texas Tech, get hired as an NFL head coach? Only Cliff Kingsbury. He's like dating, Instagram models. He's just living his best life. Even when he gets fired from the NFL, he ends up working for Lincoln Riley at USC, just hanging out. Like he's one of those guys where he's like, I'm good looking and hey man, it all works out for me.
Yeah. Just comes rolling in the suit. I remember being at Big 12 Media Days, and it was like Snyder would walk in, and he would talk to everybody on press row and just walk in like a jumpsuit and just like didn't care, didn't or just warm ups, a windbreaker maybe. And
old man.
And
he's wearing like the Cortezes.
Yeah, he'd be like, I eat Taco Bell every night, that guy. And then Cliff Kingsbury walks in a white suit with like 12 security guys, and you're like, yeah, that's why we wrote against you. Exactly. You're coaching at Tech, bro.
But you know why he does it. If we were that good looking, we'd do it too. He's like, well, he's a really good looking dude. I mean, that's what really he gets like he's wearing like he's like making a fashion statement at Big 12 Media Days. You're like, what? Just wear your gear. You're a coach. Wear a suit. That's a good question. I like that. All right. What coaches do you root against? Because some of them make it really easy. I got a good one here. I got to go. You know what? I'll save it. I got the best one for you.
Okay.
The best one on the other side. I'll save it for this.
Keep sending those in on the text line too. And then we'll see if we get some more good ones. I see a couple more. I'll mention on the other side as well. 512-447-3776.
They might be the one. They might get mine on the other side because it's too easy. I don't know why I didn't think of it, but we'll hit that on the other side. We'll hit the big fat poll today. Good stuff from my man Patrick. We'll come right back. This is the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis coming right back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. It is a top of the charts Tuesday. That's when Patrick, the Ideallionaire, plays jams that reach the top of the Billboard charts on this day in history. And it's my favorite musically themed day of the week. I learned so much, and it's always very eclectic. It's definitely the most eclectic of our musically themed days of the week because
Yes.
genre is all over the place. I love it. It's great stuff. Otis. Is Otis Redding?
Yes, Otis Redding.
Oh man, yeah, classic Otis Redding there. I always thought that it's a Corey Redding, and I could never confirm it. It was always a locker room rumor, and I don't think we ever confirmed it with Corey. One way or the other.
It would be hard. It would have to be like some weird cousin because Otis Redding didn't live that long.
No, I know. So I'm saying, like, I don't know where that came from. Like I said, it just could have been like just straight up fake. I have no idea. But in the locker room, I remember that being discussed. I'm like, is that real? Probably should just ask Corey himself and then got it straight. But either way, the rumor still exists about that. Corey, hit me up if you listen. You're like, hell no, that ain't true. What they're talking about? Don't be spreading that nonsense. Anyway, but yeah, there you go. Little top of the charts Tuesday. My man Patrick always hooking us up. Also hooked us up with the big fat poll of the day, which was a really interesting conversation that started. Patrick, let the folks know who may have missed it last segment what the topic is for the big fat poll of the day.
We were watching LSU in Iowa last night. It was realizing Kim Mulkey, one of the most easily root againstable persons in life. And so the question is, which coach do you root against the most? And that's what we said. It could be like Kim Mulkey, a Lincoln Riley. You brought up Cliff Kingsbury. That's a good one. Lane Kiffin, John Calipari. You got a good one?
The best one. And I don't know why I missed it. It's Deion.
Deion's there. Deion's, yeah.
Deion Sanders. And I am I'm the biggest Deion fan out there. I wore number 21 for Deion. I idolized Deion growing up. I will admit, Deion makes it very easy to root against his team. Like I think he's doing it on purpose. I think he knows the power of that of being the polarity. He knows the power of being polarizing, and I think he also used the psychology of us against the world with his team and that kind of thing. So I think, and he likes to be different, right? He wants to be an outlier. Deion never wanted to be like everybody else. He always wants to stand out, and so all of the things that Deion does and things he says, I enjoy them and they're fun. But oh man, of course you root against Deion. Most Americans are going to root against Deion because he is just way too flamboyant, way too outspoken, way too matter of fact about stuff. People don't like that. You know what I mean? It makes Americans uncomfortable when you're that matter of fact and in your face. It did. Trump was like that when he first started running. We were like, oh, what is all this? What is all that? And now we're used to it. Now we're like, we've totally adapted to it. Now, we don't even care about that crazy stuff that's said. But I think ultimately Deion has that kind of same effect in college football.
I like that. Yeah, that is he definitely falls into the group because I think it's because I don't necessarily root against, but you're right. There's tons and tons of people that actively root against him, and he does. He wants that. He goes out. That's part of that. Shedeur Sanders going against the Texas 6A players was him. I've had a hard life growing up, the son of one of the most famous athletes of all time. It's been so rough for me working with every single player I've ever wanted to meet. It's been rough. Those other
Tom
guys,
Brady's cell number, Tom Brady's cell.
Those other guys. It's like they want you to go against them in points. Yeah, we did get some other good ones. We did get Bob Stoops is getting people just. And the thing is,
that's from a Longhorn perspective too, though.
Exactly. That's the thing. I don't necessarily root against Bob Stoops in the XFL or wherever he's coaching. Like that, it doesn't bother me because he's about an OU. No, thank you. But they go out there. Jimbo Fisher, I think Jimbo Fisher is they root against him because now even his own teams root against him. So even people that he coached for are not a fan of his right now.
He makes enemies where he goes pretty much. Like Florida State fans now they root against Jimbo. A&M fans they'll root against Jimbo now. That's a great point.
Yeah, Jerry Jones does not fall in this, guys. Jerry Jones does not.
No, he's not a coach. He's not a coach.
He does want to be called coach.
That is his fantasy. His fantasy is to one day before he died just say, "Let me take it over from the sideline. Let me do it. Just say, let me do it. Let me show you how it's done." Oh yeah, that's just Jerry's fan. Jerry has dreams about that one. Just being the actual coach on the sideline. He knows that he would get mocked and ridiculed and humiliated if he ever did it. But that is his dream. Ultimately, that's what he wants. He just knows he's smart enough to know what he doesn't know. It's like I can't be a coach. Yeah, that's good stuff. All right, so that's the big fat poll of the day. What coach makes it easy to root against them? Who is it? And Kim Mulkey is that. Kim Mulkey is great at that. She is fantastic at making herself easy to root. And I said, I actually like a lot of these coaches. I actually am fans of theirs.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Mike Gundy. I talk about Mike Gundy more in
Yeah.
Austin radio than most people who in Oklahoma radio. I mean, I talk about Mike Gundy a lot because I admire him as a coach. He makes it easy to root against him. I mean, Mike Gundy is easy to root against. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Because he has a certain, I don't know, this is a certain style. There's a certain, I don't know, the way he carries himself and the things that he says. He's very polarizing too. And I think that's also all these different coaches have to come. They're polarizing. They're not a lot of these coaches are not afraid to say their opinion out and then saying your opinion. Yeah. Upset something.
And when he went into they decided to break up their relationship. That whole conversation, man, it's about, you know what it's about. You know what it's about. Stop pretending.
Yeah.
Hey,
Who's the NBA? Who's the NBA coach like that?
I don't think anybody sticks around that long.
That's a great point.
No, they don't. NBA coaches don't stick around. Like Greg Popovich was in Spoelstra. And Popovich, I'm sure there's people who hate Popovich because he is outspoken and he's very politically outspoken and everything else. But I don't know if there's tons and tons of people that are rooting against him because the Spurs are bad. If the Spurs were good right now, I would put him in that category. But I think if they're bad, you don't really have to root against a guy who's not really on TV much. You don't see him. You may not root against him as much.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. You feel like, hey, fate has already doing him dirty because he's no longer relevant, but he will be. Matter of fact, I got some Brian Windhorst sound I think we want to play later on the show. Actually, talking about the Spurs and talking about they may be ahead of schedule, even though I believe they could potentially. You let me know if I'm off here, Patrick. Couldn't they potentially have the worst season win-wise in history of the organization if they don't win enough games?
No, I have to imagine last year was worse.
Really?
I have to.
All right.
Because they're not the worst. They're not the worst team in the league right now.
But I'm talking about for them. I'm talking about in terms of their history, not the league. I'm talking about.
No, we can get into it because they've announced some news yesterday that they're done for the season. But
they're done for the season. Okay, no. I just thought but either way, our point is they're not relevant right now.
Yes.
But they may be ahead of schedule. Brian Windhorst has a nice report about that. We'll get into that coming up a little bit later on. Okay, let's also get to the Horn headlines because we got a Raj rant I want to get to. I want to talk Cowboys there. As a matter of fact, this is relevant to one of the topics that we want to get to. I was just watching, I got FS1 on in the background. They were just talking about NFL odds, I believe, to win the Super Bowl and talking about NFL win totals. But they did it from a Cowboys perspective. And I want to get into that because there's a great study done. Research article from Awful Announcing where they actually tracked how often some of these programs, these sports programs on TV talk about certain sports celebrities and certain teams, and maybe you won't be surprised at how much Cowboys conversation, even nationally, they talk. Even with the Cowboys being underwhelming and at times not obviously being a franchise that doesn't meet expectations, they still are the number one TV star on the number one TV show. So we'll get into that and also talk about how the Cowboys miscalculated the market when it comes to the quarterback position. Before we do that, let's hit the Horn headlines from my man Patrick Davis and get caught up and informed on the big headlines of the day.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. The women's Final Four is set after Caitlin Clark and Iowa were able to top LSU 94-87. Clark scored 41 points, hitting 9 threes to get the win over the team that beat them for the championship a year ago. And on the other side of the bracket, UConn beat USC 80-73 to reach their record 24th Final Four as a school. With NC State, this is the first time two universities have reached a Final Four in both men's and women's basketball in the same season. Texas baseball is in action tonight against Abilene Christian, a team who has never beaten the Longhorns. The Horns will look to rely on their hot bats to get a win over a team that has suspect pitching this season. In the NBA, the Phoenix Suns topped the Pelicans 124-111, with Devin Booker putting up 52 points and 9 assists. The New Orleans loss helps the Mavericks gain a little breathing room in the standings as they will take on the Warriors tonight in their push for the 4 seed in the West. Texas men's basketball has their first player enter the transfer portal as redshirt sophomore Gavin Perryman announces his plans to be a grad transfer this offseason. Perryman walked on to Texas in 2021 and has appeared in 11 games in his 2 seasons on the team. And in the MLB, Ronel Blanco powered the Astros to their first win of the season, pitching in the first no-hitter of the season against the Blue Jays. The 30-year-old Blanco was only pitching in his 8th career start when he entered the record books with the Astros' 17th no-hitter in team history. And the Rangers continued their hot start as they beat the Rays 9-3, with Adolis Garcia hitting his 100th career home run in the win. The Rangers will send Andrew Haney to the mound today with pregame starting at 5:15 right here on the Horn. And that is your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines there. Okay, so let's get to this Cowboys story here, and then we'll continue to talk a little bit more Cowboys in Raj around today. Also, Daniel Jeremiah is predicting history is going to be made in regards to quarterbacks in the NFL draft. If we have time, we'll get to that too. So, awful announcing, and they cover obviously broadcasting in sports, period. They do a good job, though. They've kind of branched out and they do a lot of different topics, but they actually wanted to track how often daytime sports talk programming on television, ESPN and Fox Sports, so FS1 and ESPN, how often they talked about the Cowboys and other relevant topics. So they tracked from March 25th, the Monday, through March 29th. So it's a 5-day period. All right. They just tracked how often they said Cowboys, Dak, and Jerry. And they make sure it was Jerry Jones and not Jerry Jeudy or somebody like that. So those 3 terms is what they tracked. How often Cowboys, Dak, and Jerry were mentioned. And then they also compared it to other topics like Caitlin Clark, LeBron, Mahomes, Draymond, UConn, Caleb, because talking about Caleb Williams in the draft, opening day. So other different topics, right? And how, the Cowboys and the how often the Cowboys were mentioned compared to the other relevant topics. And so here's what they found and I've always said Cowboys are the number one TV star on the number one TV show in America for a reason. And whether you like it or not, Jerry Jones is a marketing genius. The Cowboys mentioned by network, FS1 mentioned them in that time span of 5 days, 106 times. ESPN mentioned them 38 times. Dak, that's just the Cowboys. Just so remember, we're doing Cowboys, Dak, and Jerry. Dak was mentioned on FS1 103 times, on ESPN 35 times in that time period. And Jerry Jones was mentioned 89 times on FS1 and on ESPN 19 times. So total mentions by network, FS1 that time period, 298 mentions for the Cowboys, 92 on ESPN. And if you look at the featured segments by network, I mean, ESPN has, I think, like 12 and FS1 has like 26. So think about that. I mean, basically FS1, they are a Cowboys-centric network when it comes to it. I literally just looked up there and told you guys, hey, man, I'm looking at FS1 right now in the background, and they're coming at it from a Cowboys-centric perspective. And it's crazy that I found this story yesterday, too. 298 times in a 5-day span, they mentioned Cowboys, Dak, or Jerry Jones. And I'm sure in some other way they can talk about the Cowboys, too, and just not mention those particular terms or those particular names. But if you go look at it's mostly in the morning show is where it happens. But when you compare it to LeBron was the next closest relevant topic in terms of popularity. He was mentioned on FS1 181 times, 47 on ESPN in that same time span. Caitlin Clark didn't get as much love as I thought. She only got 6 mentions on FS1. ESPN got 40. Patrick Mahomes got 60 on FS1, 40 mentions on ESPN. Hell, Draymond Green got 51 on FS1, 58 on ESPN. Caleb Williams, 71 on FS1, 69 on ESPN in that time span. And opening day, only 13 mentions on FS1, 29 on ESPN. So if you look at it, comparing it to any of the other relevant topics, the Cowboys by far and away blow out and blow away any other discussed topic on those main morning shows. The number one TV star on the number one TV show in America, which is the NFL, and it really ain't even close. And like I said, it's partly Jerry, but it's also the networks, and now it's kind of a vicious cycle. Jerry feeds it, just feeds them as much as they need, and they keep throwing out the kind of the Cowboys story and the Cowboys propaganda. Cowboys fans hate it because all they want to do is win. But Jerry Jones loves it because whether they win or not, cash comes rolling in. Cowboys are relevant,
you're
baby.
being talked about. I mean, how many other owners, how many other owners of sports teams would love to be in that situation? And pretty much every single one of them would go, oh, no, I would trade a lot to be able to be talked about all the time. Even if it's negative, anything else, any business would love to get that much free advertising. And the Cowboys do get it. They're always going to be that. I don't know. Even if they lost, how many seasons would the Cowboys have to lose before they really jipped out? Because I feel like 2, you would still be, that would be the conversation. The Cowboys been awful for 2 seasons. When will they turn it around? Is it like 5? Is it like 5 seasons where they're like, oh no, it's just Jerry's going completely senile now. He tried to trade.
No, I'm with you. That would be the story though, is like, because they would have to fire people, and then it would be the car wreck. We just want to watch we'd watch the disaster. Either way, I'm sure a lot of Cowboys fans already know that, but I just thought those numbers were a bit startling, and does confirm we already know Cowboys going to get, they'll get the headlines. At this point, I think Cowboys fans are tired of headlines. They want the dubs. They want the wins. Speaking of the wins for the Cowboys, quarterback is the biggest topic of discussion for the Cowboys, but I want to get into the backup quarterback and how they might have misread the market, especially when it comes to that Trey Lance trade. Let's get into this a little bit, Patrick, in the Rod's rant of the day. Now, we all remember famously, unfortunately, when the Cowboys misread the wide receiver market in such a terrible way that they lost. I don't even know really if you really could quantify the amount of value they lost in that Amari Cooper trade, where they just gave him up for a 5th round pick. They exchanged 6th round picks with the Browns, but they basically gave Amari Cooper up for a 5th round pick. And then later on that offseason, we saw, or at least around that time later on, AJ Brown was traded for a 1st round pick and a 3rd. Devontae Adams was traded for a 1st and a 2nd. Tyreek Hill was traded for a 1st, a 2nd, 2 4ths, and a 6th. And by the way, I want to say at the time, guys, Amari Cooper, it was younger than all those receivers. He was actually younger. I'm not making that up. Go back and look at it. I remember that standing out to me and being like, what the hell? Because he came into the league so early. So he was actually younger.
Yeah.
And those guys went for obviously way more trade draft value than Amari Cooper did. Now, some would say, of course, the Cowboys, there were personal reasons for it, Patrick, but that was malpractice. That was general manager malpractice. That was really, talk about a miscalculation. And I'm not saying they did that again. That's probably the worst example of it. But what were you going to say? That's to me, that stands out. And every time I think about the Cowboys miscalculating the market, that's the one that jumps to mind.
No, of course it is, because we talked about it at the time, wondering what they were doing. And the way I always described that trade was somebody putting out a couch on the curb and then going online and asking for our best offer. That they basically said, we're gonna cut Amari Cooper, we're getting rid of him, we can't afford to pay him, we're getting rid of this guy. And then they asked for a trade and just completely went off. And then a week later, the wide receiver market, Christian Kirk went for $70 million or whatever it was a week later. And you realize that the entire market had shifted. And they, instead of waiting in seeing what was going to happen. They had to make their move first. They wanted to clear that. And what was the crazy part about it is it was to clear cap room for a free agency run that they don't do.
That's true.
It's one thing if they were going to go out and attack free agency or hard, but they don't do that.
Not gonna do that. Yeah, you're not doing that. Amari Cooper was younger than Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill, but not AJ Brown. AJ Brown was still younger. That was different, but still. My point being, they misread the market, and I love your analogy about the couch. We're gonna put the couch out there, and then who wants to bid for this thing? Who wants to bid for it? It's like nobody. Nobody wants to bid for it.
We know
I'll
it's free.
Pennies.
We know it's free. Look, I'll tell you what. Right. If you put it back inside the house, I'll give you $5.
I'll give you $5. That's essentially what happened. I love it. That's exactly what happened with the Cowboys and Amari Cooper. So just thinking about that, I think they had another miscalculation of the market. And I believe this time it was at the quarterback position. Think about all the first round quarterbacks now that have been traded. So now we got a sample size so we can kind of look at the collective value of these guys. So we saw that Justin Fields, he's a former first-round quarterbacks who have been recently traded. Justin Fields was recently traded for a 6th-round pick. Now, conditionally, it could become a 4th-round pick. I think he has to start the majority of the games and play the majority of the snaps. So a 6th-round pick that conditionally could become a 4th-round pick. You have the Kenny Pickett trade. Kenny Pickett was traded for to Philadelphia for a 3rd-round pick. Remember, they got a 4th-round pick in exchange, though. So they got some value in return. Not exactly the 3rd-round value, but close to it, a 4th-round pick. Mac Jones was traded for a 6th-round pick. So the Trey Lance trade, now Trey Lance did go 3rd overall. I think you had Kenny Pickett. That's the highest of any of these quarterbacks that was traded. So maybe there is the value initially that Trey Lance had. But I almost wonder now if the Cowboys could have got him for cheaper. Traded a 4th-round pick for him, which is good. I actually agreed with the move. But now looking at some of the other moves, 6th-round pick for Justin Fields could become a 4th, but at least you got conditions there. There were no conditions on your Trey Lance trade. The Kenny Pickett trade, he got a 4th-round pick in return, even though they gave up a 3rd-round pick, and the 6th-round pick for Mac Jones. You know, and except this is a game of inches here. Now we're talking about difference being negligible, but it adds up when you're talking about the accumulation of value over time with players who outperform and underperform their contracts. And that's all you're trying to do is to get players to outperform their deals.
Yeah, and I mean,
Trey Lance right now, I don't know if he's outperforming his deal. He's an investment right now.
Yeah.
An investment in Trey Lance.
Because again, Trey Lance wasn't a backup, and he may never even be a backup for the Cowboys because Cooper Rush still the backup.
Cooper Rush is still the backup. Yeah.
Trey Lance is hopefully we don't draft quarterbacks and this guy will turn out to be the pick that he was supposed to be. But I think that if I remember correctly, there was other teams reportedly offering a 5th for Trey Lance. And the Cowboys came in and said, we'll do the best offer. We want to get it done. So the Cowboys offer a 5th. They weren't going to get him. So the deal was they could have gone for a different quarterback. They could have waited and gone for Kenny Pickett the year after. They could have just drafted somebody with that pick and seen if that would have worked out. I don't mind it a ton. I do think they're overpaying in the fact that he's not their backup quarterback. That bothers me more, that you're not trying to get him out there, that you're not, I said it all last year. It bothered me that they used 2 roster spots for 2 guys that did not see the field in Deuce Vaughn and Trey Lance when you had so many problems and so many other holes that you need another running back on that committee and you didn't go out and sign one because you had to keep Deuce Vaughn on the roster, that you couldn't just put 2 quarterbacks because if you knocked Trey Lance down to the practice squad, someone else would go pick him up. You had too many guys that were projects on a team that was competing for a Super Bowl. I thought that was an issue of just roster management wise. But overall, I don't mind the trade of a 4th-round pick for it if you believe that he's really going to be good. If you didn't do your scouting enough and you were just taking a shot because you watched ESPN and they said he was going to be good one day and you didn't have your own scouting report and have your own guys in the room telling you, no, we can make Trey Lance great. If Mike McCarthy wasn't telling you that he could make Trey Lance great, that would worry me about the trade. But it's not that because they didn't pay a 4th-round pick for a backup quarterback. Cooper Rush is their backup quarterback. They paid a
I know.
4th round pick for a third round for a third string quarterback who may never ever see the field in Dallas.
Yeah,
that's what they
what
did.
It is.
And
Yes.
so there is no judge for that because no one would ever trade for that.
I know, but and maybe we're not looking at the long-term vision, which is they think about blowing this thing up and then they could have a Trey Lance, a top 5 pick potentially as their developmental future quarterback. I don't know, but right now, based on what you just laid out there so astutely and kind of what I've compared with the other first-round quarterbacks who have recently been traded, I think they might have overspent just a little, but I don't know what the long-term vision is. So, but I'm saying now, I think you overspent for it, but it's okay. I agree with the move because you need to start acquiring better quarterbacks.
If Trey Lance doesn't look good in preseason this year, they vastly overspent. Because if he doesn't look good, this is the last year of the contract. You're not re-signing him, and if you're re-signing him, you could have signed him in free agency anyway.
Yeah, and he just got a roster bonus, I believe, right?
So that's what I'm saying is if he doesn't play this season, if he's not ready to go, you could have just waited. And you didn't need to have him. And I get you're putting him in your system and your coaches, and you feel all that's going to help you develop him as a quarterback. He's still younger than quarterbacks that'll be drafted in this draft. There's that to be said. Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. I think are both older than he is. So you can say there's reasons to believe that he still has something left in the tank and can go out there.
Totally agree.
But if he's not playing in the preseason, if he was so bad that he is not eligible, if he's not able to crack the field in preseason play for them this year, then that was a bad trade. If he comes out and looks decent during preseason, then okay, you taking a developmental project. I'll be glad that the Cowboys at least went to get another quarterback instead of just being okay with Dak Prescott and never putting any pressure behind him whatsoever. I agree with you that they probably could have got him for less, that 5th round reported trade may have been a fugazi. It may have not been real.
Mm-hmm.
That very easily could have been the 49ers telling them that they had another guy on the hook for 5th round.
Could be. Yeah.
And that could have been a 5th round with a 6th round swap and a 7th round swap and a future 6 coming back and all of that.
Exactly.
And they left that part out of it. So I agree with you. They very easily could have overpaid. On the flip of that, if he shows up in preseason, that doesn't bother me at all because the Cowboys just don't invest in quarterback enough anyway, backup quarterback. So I'm fine with them investing anything in it. But if he turns out to not see the field really and Cooper Rush is just the guy and you're going to draft somebody else or you're going to try other options at quarterback, then you overpaid a lot.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the comparable value with the other quarterbacks that right now it's just looking like the Cowboys, might miscalculated, but that's okay because I think it was a wise move for them to prioritize quarterback acquisition. I just, like I said, now I think they need to prioritize value in addition to the quarterback acquisition. Yeah. And I don't think they did. I think they just 4th round pick. It's 4th round pick. That's a good pick. It's a good, you need that 4th round pick. That could be a starting running back for you right now.
It could be.
Right?
It could be.
And I think that you made a lot of great points, but I think the one that was really most compelling was when you said you're in win now mode and you got and spent a 4th round pick on a 3rd string quarterback, basically, or your developmental quarterback,
and a roster
spot. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, right. Yes, and so nothing wrong with that, but that could have been those assets could have been contributing to your win now philosophy.
Yeah,
to help you.
Tell me they didn't need another linebacker on that roster to switch out throughout that
running
season?
Back.
But you could. There's other places where I would have used a roster spot other than that.
Yeah.
If it was me, but that's it's Jerry.
Yeah, that's Jerry. All right, we come back. We'll get into with some NBA discussion. Brian Windhorst giving the Spurs some love, giving them a shout out. He says the Spurs are ahead of schedule. We'll come back and hear that, and we'll see what our resident Spurs fan has to say about the Spurs possibly being ahead of schedule. All that and more right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis, coming back on the Horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a top of the charts Tuesday. That's when my co-host, the Idealionaire, Patrick Davis, that's when he plays jams that reach the top of the Billboard charts on this day in history. And I always love this musically themed day of the week. It's my favorite, the most eclectic. Also, I learn more about music from my man Patrick, the music aficionado on the show. So we appreciate him. Also, the big fat poll of the day. We'll let you know what that is because that's caused I think a good conversation too. The text line 512-447-3776. Patrick, before we dive into this audio from Brian Windhorst, tell the folks about the big fat poll of the day.
Big fat poll of the day today. It's been in honor of Kim Mulkey being a coach that is very easy to root against. Which coach do you root against the most? And so, we've talked about Kim Mulkey, and then Lincoln Riley's one of those guys. And Rod brought up Deion Sanders, who may be the most going for that. Then he's up there with Kim Mulkey of trying to be disliked and trying to be rooted against. You'd be up there. You could be going to the Lane Kiffin role or John Calipari and those guys, and
Lane Kiffin doesn't try. He's that's his personality. I think Deion goes out of his way, and not that Deion doesn't believe the stuff and he's not authentic, but I think he goes out his way to be matter of fact and to be unapologetic about his statements and his flamboyance, and I think that makes some people uncomfortable and makes them easy. I know people who are colleagues, like professionals, who root against. They're supposed to be objective. No, I don't like Deion. Nope. Yeah, I root against Deion. And these are guys who have been in the industry for years. Most people dislike and are hating on Deion. Most people that are watching those Colorado games are rooting against the Buffaloes, which I think is actually fun. Honestly, you could argue that's what brings the eyeballs. You need people that's going to hate on it, because most people that's watching Texas football, and Texas football gets a lot of ratings too, they ain't watching the root on the Longhorns.
Yeah, it's Floyd Mayweather. Sure. Ain't nobody's rooting for Floyd Mayweather.
Ding, ding, ding. You're great. There you go. Best example of it. Ain't nobody rooting for Floyd Mayweather. But you're watching to see if somebody hopefully knock him the blank out. But that never happens.
Nope.
Money Mayweather, he's smart about that kind of stuff. So that's the big fat poll today. So go check that out. That's on the text line. Good conversation happening. 512-447-3776. Okay, so the Hoop Collective. I've been getting a lot of audio from the Hoop Collective, Brian Windhorst and some of his friends. They have put together a NBA centric podcast, and it's really good. And they've been showing a lot of love to some of the Texas teams. We played some audio earlier of him saying that the Mavs are really the hot. They're kind of the hot team in the NBA, and around the NBA, a lot of people believe they can make some noise, especially if they get hot at the right time, which is the end of the season right now. Well, I know the Spurs aren't really relevant. And I found this stat. This is that I was talking about earlier, Patrick. So my man, Paul Garcia, he does great work with Project Spurs. He says with the Spurs now need to go 2-5 in their final 7 games to avoid franchise record for fewest wins.
Yeah, no, I was looking it up. Yeah, and they're 4 games behind what they were last year.
So it doesn't. I mean, this is the goal, right? The goal
is. Well, I mean, but not really. This year's draft isn't good. Like, there's no one in this draft. You're hopefully to get a starter in this year's draft. I don't know if there's a star.
So you're not gonna get Wemby's running mate in this draft. Is what you're saying?
No, you get a starter, and I mean, look, anything's possible. You could find somebody who shows out. There's foreign players. There's a bunch more fringe players that one of those could turn out to be a really, really good player. Yeah. But your odds of somebody being a star in the NBA is much, much lower than them being a complete bust. So it's a much higher bust rate draft. But for Spurs fans, if they did not see the news, the Spurs have now shut down for the rest of the season Devin Vassell and Jeremy Sohan.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Both of those,
so they're gonna set that record. Then is what you're saying.
Yeah, Vassell was having some problems in his foot, I believe, and they did an MRI and saw that there was a small fracture. So they said, okay, we're shutting him down. And Jeremy Sohan has an ankle injury that they're going to do surgery on, so they're shutting him down as well. There's not a ton of games left in the season at this point. Why risk injuring anybody anymore? I know you want to win. I know Wemby wants to win, but at the same point, you just don't want to risk injuring anybody.
No. At this point, yeah, especially with, it's nothing on the line. And I know the pride is on the line, but nothing really on the line for the Spurs. How about this little nugget? Since you brought up Devin Vassell, I got this. And yeah, this is a great little stat here. So among the 60 lineups which have played the most minutes in the league, the Spurs lineup of Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Jones, Sohan, and Wembanyama, which has played 142 minutes over 39 games, has the second best net rating at plus 20.8.
Yeah.
Should have shared that in what the stats. There you go. But obviously you won't see that anymore because, as Patrick mentioned, they're resting those guys. So here is let's get to the Brian Windhorst RDO because I want to get Patrick's thoughts about it. So he believes there's some buzz about these Spurs, even though they're at the bottom of the standings. Here is Brian Windhorst on the Hoop Collective, essentially implying the Spurs maybe, or at least Wemby maybe ahead of schedule.
Draymond used 4 varies. Very, 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 very good. These teams, not only are they blown away by what they're watching from Victor when they're playing against him, but where they saw him early in the season. And so all I'm going to say is this. Yes, the Spurs have a responsibility and a challenge to build this roster around him. But having spent this weekend here, I am going to say that there is going to be a player or two who is going to be forward-thinking and want to get himself to San Antonio. Somebody is going to see this opportunity, and this is my prediction. I am making a prediction.
Man. Wow. Stop.
Here we go.
The presses.
Hold on. Let me get ready.
Stop them.
Somebody is going to see this opportunity and say, I can get myself to San Antonio. I can be this guy's running mate. I got to do it. And there's wide open space to do it.
Wow.
Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be this summer or even next season, but at some point, somebody's going to see this in it. My guess is, and this is just a total guess, my guess is it's not going to be a guy who's in his early 20s on the Fun Max contract. My guess is it's going to be a guy on his second contract, or maybe at the end of his first, big contract, who realizes I'm not going to be able to, because I can sit here and say, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if Ant Edwards played with Victor Wembanyama? Yeah, it would be amazing. Guess what? Ant Edwards ain't going anywhere. All right. I'm talking about somebody who's somebody is going to recognize, they already are recognizing what they see here.
All right, let me ask you, Patrick, because you're the biggest Spurs fan I know. Do you agree, number one, with Brian Windhorst and what he's saying? And number two, if he is right, what kind of player is it that
those are the hard questions
is compatible with Wemby's game?
So I do think there are going to be players who want to come to San Antonio to play with Wemby. I think those will come. If you look at this year's free agency class, there's not really anybody in there that you think, oh, that takes the Spurs to a really higher level. There's guys that can help. You can bring back a DeMar DeRozan, who'd be a good player to play with Wemby. There's guys like that, but they're not necessarily taking you to that higher level. And if you're trying to build a franchise, what point do you take 34, 35-year-old guys at the end of their career to try and boost yourself to a 8 seed, 9 seed, that kind of team, while you build around it, those kind of questions of how you want to try and build up. But I do think there's going to be guys, and I think he's right on, like late 20s, early 30s, where they are kind of at a point in their career that they're okay, but they know where their role is. And while they enjoy it, if they're on a team where they don't necessarily feel like that has the shot, they may look and say, well, look, this is my team. Hey, guys, I get it. I'm not re-signing in a year. If you want to move me off, the Spurs will give you a draft pick for me. And, we can make it. I think trades are probably going to be, if they want to be active in the next year, it'll be all trades. There's just not a ton of free agency you can go out and get. The draft isn't really going to be great. You can try and advance this team. How much they want to run it back with Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, Devin Vassell is going to be the question. You clearly have to upgrade. I like Julian Champagnie. I like guys like Trey Jones. And it feels like Trey Jones may be there for a long time as well. But I don't know if he's your starting point guard for a long time. You'd love to have a point guard who's a really good defender, like a Jrue Holiday, but a Jrue Holiday 5 years ago is really what you'd love to find is as a guy like that who is a really good distributor and defender. That guy would be really good to add a perimeter defender. I think there's guys who are going to want to come play with the Spurs, and a lot of people are going to say that the perfect fit will be a guy who doesn't play any defense because they'll just funnel to Wemby. That's a terrible idea. Don't do that. That's been the problems with the Spurs this season, is they've had too many places where when Wemby leaves the court, the team goes on a 20-0 run against the Spurs because their defense is based around one guy. And so many of these other players get kind of lazier on the perimeter, and they just don't have those defenders. So there's a lot of places you can upgrade. It's the question of when somebody wants to come to San Antonio, are they coming on a 2-year deal that's favorable to the Spurs?
Yeah.
And they're willing to play ball, or do they still want to come and get that 4-year guaranteed money for a guy who's 32 years old? And you go, well, Wemby's still going to be good in 4 years when you're fading off. And if we're paying you $25 million in 4 years, that's not positive for us continuing a dynasty as the Spurs. Those are the questions they're going to have to answer. But there's definitely people that are going to want to play with Victor. That makes because of what he can do, because you just watch him defensively and say, that's an edge we have. When you say somebody to assist to, somebody who can do the things he can do, the same way people want to play with LeBron, the same way people wanted to play with Steph Curry. There's guys like that, but I don't know if there's I don't know if they necessarily have the optimism of it being next year that they're going to be great. I think next year you're aiming to be what the Rockets are this year.
Yeah.
Is in that maybe a little bit better, but be in the play-in.
Yeah.
But the West is stacked. I mean, you're talking about you need Golden State and the Lakers and some of these other teams to start falling off because those are the teams at the bottom right now. And they're still not bad teams.
That's a good point. Well, when they got LeBron and Steph, anything can happen with those teams, even though if they don't play great.
And then you say the Rockets are ready to take that next step up and see in that spot. The Utah Jazz are trying to get there with a ton of picks and a ton of space. So there's a lot of trying to get up in that. It's just really competitive in the West. You like some of the pieces, but yeah, this season with Vassell and Sohan already being written off for the rest of the season, don't expect much. As we get into drafts, I'll do more and more draft prep, but
so they're not going to find that guy, the Robin to the Batman.
What you'd really love to find, because this is what everybody would love to find, is a 6'9" defensive wing who can shoot threes, a la when they drafted Kawhi Leonard. That's what you'd love to find to pair with Wemby, that you have a great perimeter defender who's also got a little bit of length, can do a lot of things. Those are just really, really hard to find. And I don't know if there's that guy in the draft. I think there's guys that have the size, but you don't know if they have the defensive acumen, if they're willing to be a team player. And if you draft a guy who's 19 years old, is he going to be mature enough to walk into a situation where he knows he will never be the star in San Antonio as long as Victor Wembanyama is there? You're in the shadow, literally, of a 7'5" man.
No, you're right about that. But hell, man, if you want to win championships,
I agree.
Hey, learn how to be a good teammate, and hell, you could end up being part of something special. All right, good stuff. Good breakdown there from my man Patrick. I know he'd be excited about some Spurs conversation. All right, we come back. What the facts, what the stats on the other side, right here with the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the Horn. All right, I know we're up against it, so I'll be quick here. Just got a couple of little nuggets here. The average kick return yards per game. Everybody's excited. The NFL adopting the hybrid kickoff return from the XFL, expecting to increase kickoff returns. Here is why. Because not only is the touchback rate upwards of 70+% now, but in 2023, the average kick return yards per game, 24.9. It was the lowest in NFL history in 2023. In 2008, around my last year in the NFL, when Robbie was still trying to hang around and doing so unsuccessfully, by the way. In 2008, when special teams and kick returns were still a big part of the game, 94.2 average kick return yards per game. It was the second highest in NFL history in 2008. And now it's the lowest in NFL history. That's why they're adopting the new NFL kickoff rule. Little factoid about Micah Parsons, who's about to get paid. We assume at one point from Jerry Jones and company. He's had at least 13 sacks in each of his first 3 seasons. The only other player to do so, Reggie White. Reggie White was so damn good, guys. When he was with the Eagles, he had more sacks than games played, actually.
Just ridiculous. Just ridiculous.
He was averaging more sacks than games played. So that's what kind of company Micah Parsons is in. All right. That's your What the Facts, What the Stats segment. We're up against it, so we're going to get back out, come back. We'll get into the no-hitter from Raniel Blanco for the Astros to get their first win of the season. Also, we'll talk about the biggest phenomenon in college sports, arguably, Caitlin Clark putting on a show once again to advance the Iowa team to the Final Four past LSU. We'll talk about that, break that down. Also, behind the Burn-Orange Curtain, we'll talk some Texas football, all that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a top of the charts Tuesday. The Idealionaire, my co-host Patrick Davis. That's when he plays jams that reach the top of the Billboard charts on this day in history. My favorite musically themed day of the week. Patrick always working hard for you. He's also got the big fat poll of the day, which has sparked some interesting conversation on the text line. Patrick, let the folks know what the big fat poll of the day is all about.
Big fat poll of the day today in honor of Kim Mulkey being one of the easiest people in the world to root against. Which coach do you root against the most? Who was watching Iowa versus LSU last night? And a lot of people root against Kim Mulkey. They had two different newspapers wrote pieces about how she was a bad person a couple of days ago.
I saw that. Yeah.
But she's on that list. I think Lincoln Riley is on that list. You brought up possibly the best example, Deion Sanders, someone who actively tries to go and get people to root against him on that list. So who do you have on that list that we're missing? 512-447-3776. We're going to get that posted up online on X as well, Twitter as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other coaches who are like that. I honestly, actively root against. I feel like in the NFL, it's got to be the coaches who are a little outspoken, like maybe the Eagles. Sirianni is kind of like that.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I'm looking at it from a Cowboys perspective, but I feel like he rubs people the wrong way anyway. He could be one of those guys. But there are not many in the NFL actually these days. I think there were more back in the day. I'm trying to think of who are the most polarizing guys now in the league.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think. I think like Sirianni is one of those guys where anybody who has the people who when they're winning come off just are really confident and they're the guys and you can't say I didn't say anything wrong and I'll do that. And then the minute they lose, then it's somehow everybody else's fault and I don't know why this is happening and I don't get it anymore. All that the switch between winning and losing. They can't take the criticism that they can hand out when they're winning. Those kind of guys.
It's just I think for every situation it does feel different. Like Doc Rivers, I think people root against Doc Rivers for some reason. I feel like, and I really don't know the reason. People just Rivers maybe because he's been on being the coach of so many teams, and he has developed so many opposing fan bases as enemies. Like they just don't like Doc Rivers because he was the coach for this team or that team. But don't you feel like Doc Rivers? You're an NBA guy. Don't you feel like most people are rooting against Doc Rivers?
But that's I think because people feel he's failed upwards. Which you said Cliff Kingsbury's in that group too. Of guys
but Cliff Kingsbury's because he's good looking. Why is Doc Rivers failing upwards?
Well, but Doc Rivers is just basically every time he's able to convince owners, oh no, I'm a really successful coach, and you're like, but you don't have the rings. You have been around so much talent, and then you see the Bucks and like the comments he had earlier this year when the Bucks fired Adrian Griffin and then hired him, and he said, I wouldn't have done that.
He said, "Yeah, don't hire me." Yeah, you know what? Give the man credit.
No. He said to the media after he had been hired, he said to not hire him. How much of that is true? No one really believes. The building, maybe he would have said, "Oh, I wouldn't have fired Adrian Griffin after they fired him," and he said, "Well, you should get another coach." They were like, "Well, it's you." But that's it.
I wouldn't do it. He said basically like I wouldn't do it. But no, you're right about it. I don't know. Doc Rivers, I think he also for some reason is in this conversation. I can't figure out exactly why, but he's in there.
He's in there. But yeah, because the teams that he coached also root against him. Like Philly's rooting against him now, and the Clippers fans were rooting against him because he never won them a title.
Yep.
And so there's a little bit of that too. CB says Jim Harbaugh as well. I think Jim Harbaugh,
yes.
We'll be getting into that in the NFL again, I think, for sure.
Great point. Jim Harbaugh was definitely there in college. There's no question. That's a great point. Yeah, you're right. Him and Deion are probably were the two easiest coaches to root against last season. I'm trying to think if there's in college. I'm talking about college football. They're really easy to root against. But by the way, I love both those guys. I think they're great. I really do. I'm a big fan of Deion, as you guys know. I idolized him as a player growing up, and I love me some Jim Harbaugh. I love his brand of football. But I will admit, easy to root against him. Like, hey, I love LeBron James, but I'll admit LeBron James is an unintentional villain. It's easy to root against LeBron James. Like he makes it. He gives you a lot of reasons to root against him. But I still admit I'm a big LeBron fan. But I'll admit, like, oh yeah. yeah, LeBron, he did it again.
Yeah.
He put an imaginary crown on his head in front of everybody. Okay,
Yeah.
yes. I'll admit, like, okay, he makes it easy.
He's sipping wine in a podcast again. Come on, LeBron.
Exactly. Like LeBron, he makes it. I'm like, LeBron, is he aware of this? Because maybe he is aware and he's just trying to trolling us, and he knows that, hey, this is gonna really rile up my fans when I do the imaginary crown on my head. And they're like, there you go. But that's a good question. I love that. So what coach, any sport, makes it easy to root against them? Because Kim Mulkey's definitely in that conversation. She takes pride in that. All right, so we'll get to the Horn headlines here momentarily from my man Patrick. He always does a great job with that. We'll also get to the Caitlin Clark performance, because she did put on the show, but so did Raniel Blanco for the Astros. Go Stros! I hadn't done that in a while, but when you hit a no-hitter, hey, man, hey, go Stros. You got to give them one out there. So we'll get into that, too, because that was a remarkable performance to give the Astros their first win of the season. So they needed it. They needed something to break them out of their funk, because they started the season over, getting swept by the Yankees. But now the Astros hopefully can capitalize on that mojo they got from Raniel Blanco. Before we get to those topics, let's let my man Patrick inform us with all of the big headlines of the day in our Horn headlines.
All right, Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. The women's Final Four is set after Caitlin Clark and Iowa were able to top LSU 94-87. Clark scored 41 points, hitting 9 threes to get the win over the team that beat them for the championship a year ago. And on the other side of the bracket, UConn beat USC 80-73 to reach their record 24th Final Four as a school. With NC State, this is the first time 2 universities have reached the Final Four in both men's and women's basketball in the same season. Texas baseball is in action tonight against Abilene Christian, a team who has never beaten the Longhorns. The Longhorns will look to rely on their hot bats to get a win over a team who has a suspect pitching this season. In the NBA, the Phoenix Suns topped the Pelicans 124-111, with Devin Booker putting up 52 points and 9 assists. The New Orleans loss helps the Mavericks gain a little breathing room in the standings, as they will take on the Warriors tonight as they're in their push for the 4 seed in the West. Texas men's basketball has their first player into the transfer portal as redshirt sophomore Gavin Perryman announces his plans to be a grad transfer this offseason. Perryman walked on to Texas in 2021 and has appeared in 11 games in his 2 seasons on the team. And in the MLB, Raniel Blanco powered the Astros to their first win of the season, pitching the first no-hitter of the MLB season against the Blue Jays. The 30-year-old Blanco was only pitching in his 8th career start when he entered the record books with the Astros' 17th no-hitter in team history. And the Rangers continued their hot start as they beat the Rays 9-3, with Adolis Garcia getting his 100th career home run in the win. The Rangers will send Andrew Haney to the mound today, with pregame starting at 5:15 right here on the Horn. And that is your Horn headlines.
I remember I was getting dressed for an event that I was hosting not too long ago, and I was jamming some Miles Davis, just trying to get in a little mood. My wife comes in, she's like, "Are you listening to jazz?" And I go, "No, I'm not listening to jazz. I'm listening to Miles Davis." There's a difference.
Yes.
I feel like that about Caitlin Clark. And people are like, "Are you watching women's basketball?" I was like, "Actually, no, I'm not. I'm just watching Caitlin Clark now." I mean, and by the way, women's basketball is experiencing a renaissance. Like it is, we are at the zenith of it. This is the apex of women's basketball. It feels like right now. It really does. I mean, with all the brands, and it seems like they have more recognizable names and celebrities, whether you're talking about coaches and players than ever before. And Caitlin Clark, the phenomenon, is a big part of that. But you know what I mean is when you don't have to be a fan of basketball to watch LeBron James and enjoy what he does, right? You don't have to be a fan of football to watch Patrick Mahomes and realize, like, oh man, he's so damn good. It was a great line from Man on Fire where he says a man can be an artist at anything. Just depends on how good you are at it, right? If you're really good at it, you turn it into an art form. And obviously that can be anybody, not just a man. And I feel like that with LeBron James in basketball. I feel like that. I mean, that Tiger Woods was like that in golf. It's like, I don't give a damn about golf, but I'll watch Tiger. he's that damn good. Like he's, you know, I mean, he's on that kind of level where he turns it into an artistic expression almost. It feels like a religious experience watching some of these iconic all-time great athletes do their thing. And I'm sure, you know, Lionel Messi is in that conversation. There are a few athletes and artists that are in that conversation. There are a lot of musicians in that conversation where I don't have to enjoy you know, the art form, you know, but I can enjoy the artiste and what they do. I feel like Caitlin Clark is there. I feel like she's there for me, where I don't necessarily need to watch women's basketball. I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't watch a lot of women's basketball, period. But I will make it appointment viewing to watch Caitlin Clark, especially in situations like she was in last night, where she's adding to her legacy and she gets to put on a show against a really good LSU team, one that won the national title last season in a matchup with our. So you got the storylines galore. And she put on the show, 41 points, 12 assists. I think she accounted for 73 assisted on or scored of the 94 points. That's where she is to me. If somebody walks in on me like, dude, are you watching women's basketball? Because I might be there again. Who knows? If it's compelling enough, I might be there again. And honestly, I felt like that a little bit when they had the battle of the sexes spin on the 3-point competition in the NBA All-Star weekend with Steph Curry and is her name Ionescu?
I believe so. Yeah.
I'm sure if I messed it up, I apologize. But it was very compelling, is my point.
Yeah.
It was really compelling. It was really interesting. And I wasn't there to watch necessarily the All-Star weekend. I was there to watch that compelling storyline. And I feel like that's where we are with Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, and I mean, it was interesting. You know, I didn't watch all of the game. I watched pieces of the game, and you saw that it was two different matchups. Caitlin Clark brings a different dynamic to the game that is a bit more like the men's game, what is now, of the 3-point shooting. And, you know, where so much of women's basketball on a lot of teams is about getting the ball inside, getting the ball to your bigger players, mid-range jump shots, those shots trying to get inside, you know, just being able to take high percentage shots is a lot more of what women's basketball has been built around for a long time. Is that fundamentally you try and come off a screen or something, get down and hit a 10-foot jump shot, and that kind of thing happens. It's not the most compelling basketball at whoever's doing it. So that is not always there. Caitlin Clark, though, you know, pulling up from 5 feet behind the 3-point line, making the move to the left hand, and then taking that step over three off balance. Those are impressive to see when she can do that. So people have to get up on her. So then she drives, and then, you know, the defense collapses and she passes the ball out. But you watch the battle between the two teams where LSU was much more about getting the ball inside and trying to get those small shots, trying to play defense, trying to play a little bit more physical, use their size, use their athleticism. And Iowa was much more about trying to get the defense to collapse and then kicking the ball back out. That they were trying to play that game a little bit more. But, you know, I'm not somebody who's going to watch a lot of sports for the drama that goes beside it. I don't need it. I don't watch reality television. I don't care about any of that stuff. This is not for me. I love the game, though. And so when you watch and you see the stuff Caitlin Clark does, you can watch that and go, that's not – it's a level of play where you can see somebody do something that is, you know, is personally very, very difficult to do, and to do on that level. That one of the conversations around Caitlin Clark this entire postseason has been if she disappears, she kills the sport. Because if she doesn't prepare and if she doesn't become this mythical figure that's bigger than the game of women's basketball, then, okay, it was just her opponents. They weren't that good. Women's basketball isn't where it needed to be, and it'll go down. And putting a lot of pressure on her shoulders to carry the weight of, you know, of what she's set up in the, you know, the goals and the expectations that are about her now. But she did in that second half. The first half, you worried about a little bit that she was not getting going, that she looked like she was having a little bit more trouble with the pressure that was being brought on her, that the effort level didn't really feel like it was completely up in that first half. At the end of the first half, Angel Reese goes on a big run of her own and scores, I think, about 10 points by herself in a run, stealing the ball, getting blocks, just doing everything to be able to come down and make LSU take a lead. Then Iowa fights back just right before the half. And then in the second half, Caitlin Clark puts it on her shoulders and does what she's been doing. But to have that and add in those expectations, add in the pressure of people, that maybe are a fan of Texas women's basketball or a fan of whatever other women's basketball. Maybe they just have a daughter who likes basketball, and really putting a lot of pressure on Caitlin Clark's shoulders to see her still achieve in those moments. That's when you get to see those people and those stories get told of someone being a generational talent. And in any sport, watching somebody do that is impressive.
Yeah, the 4 Sweet 16 games on ESPN for women's basketball averaged 1.2 million viewers. That's up 32% from last season. Through the first 2 rounds, the tournament for the women's side was averaging 812,000 viewers, more than double the same point last season. And of course, if you look at our with Caitlin Clark, their first 2 tournament games averaged, how about this, a whopping 4.1 million viewers. Is what they averaged for their first 2 tournament games, nearly 5 times last year's average. In particular, their game against West Virginia, they averaged 4.9 million viewers. And their opening round game, they got 3.2 million viewers. Hell, in NBA playoff games on average, I think the last 4 or 5 years has been about 5.5 to 6 million viewers in NBA playoff games. I mean, these are huge numbers for women's basketball. That West Virginia game averaged more viewers than every national title game for the women from 2005 to 2022. And of course, in 2023, they had the record-setting 9.9 million viewers, which, how about this? I found out those 9.9 million viewers for that women's national title game between Iowa and LSU, it was only the 3rd most viewed women's game all time. The number 1 and number 2, how about this? Number 2, USC, Texas defeats USC, 11.2 million viewers, 1986. Cheryl Miller was the star for USC.
Wow.
And I guess she was the big draw. And in 1983, the highest rated women's game. Now, I think they're pre the modern meters, the people meters is how they do it now. So this is prior to that. 1983, USC defeats Louisiana Tech, 11.8 million viewers. And that was Cheryl Miller's first national championship. And she got 11 point. She must have been a big draw back then.
Yeah. And I mean, it also, it depends on at that time too. What are you putting on TV? What are you up against? There's just not as much in the mid 80s that you could. It's not like today where I had countless, limitless options of what I was watching last night. And I had an NBA game on as well. I was watching some NBA. I put on some wrestling as well. I watched a little bit of that last night as well because WrestleMania is this weekend. So I thought I'd look at what was happening.
Nice. There you go.
So I
like that.
I had all of the things. I'm sure we'll have a WrestleMania poll before we get to the end of the week.
I would like a WrestleMania. Can you give us a WrestleMania update?
I have to go back. I said I didn't even finish Raw. I have not watched a ton of wrestling recently.
I was I have not watched it. I was like, I would like to know what's going on.
The Rock's back. The Rock's back. If you didn't know that,
I saw that. The Rock's back. That is the big news out of the wrestling world. There you go. See, one-stop shop here.
But I think when you see that, too, in viewership and everything else, there's different factors. So generational talent, seeing something that is you can only see in, that isn't anywhere else in the world to offer. And Caitlin Clark, I think with women's basketball, people know that there's a certain amount of luster that comes off of women's basketball when it goes to pro, which is opposite of the way it normally is. But I don't feel that there's as much peril in the WNBA right now. And maybe these players keep being added in there. And when Angel Reese ends up in the NBA, in the WNBA, and Caitlin Clark and Ioneska and everybody, and we keep getting more and more players that did come from that, it'll add a little bit more once we get to the playoffs, once we get to the finals. It'll still be like the NBA where there's not the coverage of it, nationally until you get to the playoffs, until you get to the end. Anyway, that's it. The NBA, which gets really good viewership all year long, it's still the playoffs are the big thing. But in sports, it's about that. And then you add in the fact of how much is a loss devastating to a team, how important, how much are the stakes of a game. And for Caitlin Clark, the stakes of the game are really, really big. This is it. This is the run. Can she go out and beat these other teams that seem to have endless resources, all of the talent, all the All-Americans? Can she overcome them all And you brought up the point earlier that she wanted to go to UConn. They didn't recruit her. Can she topple that now? Can you get through all of those pieces? Everyone else who, looks like they're going to be ahead of you. But if she loses to any one of these teams, it kind of is a peril of the whole tournament takes a gigantic blow.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it's not
no
just
doubt.
Iowa. It's not just that tournament.
Yes.
The whole tournament does, which means the weight of each one of these games, the loss is pretty big.
Oh, it's immense. The pressure on her is immense. And like I said, she's stepping up right now, and she's thriving
Yeah.
in the midst of all the pressure. That's the fun thing to watch about it. So it's potentially a GOAT conversation we're having. But if you really want to be a GOAT and you want to leave no doubt, title, championship. You get a championship, then few people will dispute your goatness. Raniel Blanco, he's not a goat, but damn, he's had a hell of a day yesterday. Had a no-hitter. How about this? Raniel Blanco's no-hitter for the Astros was the earliest no-hitter in Major League Baseball history. No duh, because he came for 4 games into the season, 5 games into the season for the Astros. And the Astros not only got the no-hitter from him, but the bats were alive and doing really well. I mean, they basically beat Toronto 10-0. But the Blanco story is really fascinating because this is a guy who's never pitched a complete game. He's never actually even pitched past the 6th inning. And he ends up having the performance of a lifetime. It was just his 8th career start. You talked about that in the headlines. And he's only out there because Justin Verlander and Jose Urquidy are injured right now, and they're not out
and
there.
Lance McCullers and Luis Garcia, and they have a lot of injured pitchers right now, which a lot of teams do.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. But you said this earlier about the Astros. That's one of the organizational priorities for them, and an emphasis has always been stockpiling young pitching. And you could argue that this is when it pays off for them, when they do have guys who are injured. And that's why the Astros have 6 no-hitters since 2019, including the postseason. No other team has more than 2 in that time span. So another one on the books for the Astros with Raniel Blanco.
Yeah, it was
a great way to break out of a funk.
It's a great way to break out of a funk, and just a great story of a guy who hasn't been able to go in. I know they were saying that a spot of the manager basically said that they wanted to pull him at about 90 pitches, but of course you're not going to pull him there. But he was 105, and they were like, if a hit comes, he's out. We're not letting him pitch a complete game one hitter. If someone gets a hit, we have to pull him because he's a way past where we wanted to use him anyway.
True.
And now he gets to fall into they didn't have much film on you. Now everybody has film on you.
Yeah, you won't surprise anybody anymore.
No.
Yet Joe Espada is the first manager in Major League Baseball history to collect the first win of his managerial career via a no-hitter, and it was an efficient one, as Patrick just brought up. Also, he only had 2 walks. Those 2 walks, both to George Springer. One to start the game and one with 2 outs in the 9th. He ends up walking George Springer too. So really good way for the Astros to break out of their funk to start the season with a no-hitter from Raniel Blanco. All right, we come back. We got to get into some Texas football discussion. We'll go behind the burnt orange curtain. There's a lot. There's a Jay Witt quote I want to get to. Matt Miller has a 7-round mock draft I want to get to. And there are player rankings from ESPN and Pro Football Focus that I want to dive into. So there's a lot. We'll see if we can cram as much as we can into our behind the burnt orange curtain segment. Talk some Texas football. This is the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, coming right back on the horn. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. If time is money, my friends over at Apple Leasing, they're in the business of saving you both. They're going to save you time, save you money, and find you tremendous value. They have the ability to put you in any make or model vehicle that you want. The professionals over at Apple Leasing will help you find the price you want, the payment you want on the car that you want. Now, navigating the car market and the car industry can be really stressful, can be really time consuming. It can be a bit of a headache. You need somebody advocating for you on your side to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck and that you're getting the best value. And that's what my friends at Apple Leasing can do for you. They've been doing it for 4 decades here in the Austin area, making sure that customer satisfaction is their top priority. You give them a call and you let them know exactly what your specifications are, what color you want, what kind of car, sedan, a truck, an SUV, whether you're in a bad lease right now, they can get you into a better lease. You let them know exactly what your budget is, what your price point is. They will help you find the perfect car for your lifestyle, but also for your wallet. More importantly, our friends at Apple Leasing, they make the process easy for you. They have what they call a simple interest easy lease that gives you flexibility, which is going to give you more possibilities and options to help you find the vehicle that fits you best, but more importantly, the vehicle that fits your budget best. Everything is overpriced. This inflation, we all understand it. We're all obviously being hit hard by it, but that's why my friends at Apple Leasing, they're hooking you up, because leasing makes a lot of sense because you're only paying for the part of the car you're actually using. That's the value my friends at Apple Leasing can find for you. So give them a call, 512-346-9977. They get all the same discounts and all the same incentives that the dealers do, except my friends at Apple Leasing, they like to pass those savings on to you, the customer. So give them a call, 512-346-9977. I'll reach out online at appleleasing.com. That's appleleasing.com. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into some Texas football conversation. Texas spring practice continues today. I believe they will get their 7th overall practice today. So we'll have some Texas spring practice nuggets coming up tomorrow. But right now, I want to talk about some of these player rankings. Pro Football Focus came out with their highest ranked players at every position, and so did ESPN. ESPN ranked their top 10 players at every position. And they, well, not every position. They did pass catcher, quarterback, they did pass rusher. So they haven't done every position. Pro Football Folks did every position. So I went and gathered as much or as many of the ESPN articles that I could find. I don't know if they've been piecemealing it out or if they're just kind of doing it, week by week. But I found 4 Longhorns that were being honored or at least being mentioned on the ESPN player rankings for the best college football players in 2024. And Pro Football Focus, they had 2 Longhorns mentioned in their player rankings. Now, they did 10, but only 2 Longhorns were mentioned, and they were both in the top 5. Quinn Ewers was the 5th quarterback in the Pro Football Focus rankings when they did their rankings of the top players in college football for the 2024 season. He was behind Carson Beck with Georgia, Dylan Gabriel of Oregon, Jalen Milroe of Alabama, and Shadur Sanders of Colorado. I would probably put Quinn ahead of Jalen Milroe. Just me. I think he's a better quarterback than Jalen Milroe. But the other guys, Dylan Gabriel, Carson Beck, Shadur Sanders, I can totally get. Those guys are all in that same discussion. And when you look at ESPN's quarterback rankings, they also have Carson Beck at the top of their QB rankings. They have Carson Beck at number 1 in their QB rankings. They have Quinn Ewers number 3 in their QB rankings. They have Dylan Gabriel too. So very similar to the Pro Football Focus rankings and quarterbacks, except with the top 2, Carson Beck and Dylan Gabriel. Longhorn fans know Dylan Gabriel really well. Of course, they saw him last year. One of the losses for the Longhorns was to Dylan Gabriel in Oklahoma. Now he's transferring to Oregon, and then Carson Beck. The Longhorns will see the Georgia Bulldogs on the upcoming schedule. So Quinn Ewers, who's ranked 3rd on this ESPN list, 5th by Pro Football Focus, he'll be able to prove his worth as a quarterback because he'll be able to get into an old-fashioned kind of quarterback duel with Carson Beck, and both of those guys will be in the conversation to be the top quarterback taken in the 2025 draft. So Quinn Ewers by both ESPN and Pro Football Focus should be in the conversation, be one of the better quarterbacks in the country next year. Pro Football Focus also ranked Kelvin Banks as the 2nd best offensive tackle in college football for 2024 based on their ratings. And those are the only Longhorns that are honored by Pro Football Focus in their overall college football player rankings. ESPN, they're a little bit more Longhorn love, at least with their rankings. They have Quinn Ewers, I said, at number 3, but they rank the top wide receivers are pass catchers. I think is the better way to put it. That's what they called them. The top pass catchers in college football, and they have Isaiah Bond being the number 10 ranked pass catcher in college football. So that would put him in the top 10 and that, for the Longhorns, we're not even really sure. Longhorn fans are not even really sure if he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver. There's still talk that Jonte Cook could end up being the number 1 guy in terms of target share. He's most likely to be that dude because he does fit I would say Stark's got a type at wide receiver. He likes speed demons, small-ish, fast guys. He basically can fit right into the spot, and you can utilize him in a very similar way as you did Xavier Worthy because he's got that high-end speed. He's talking about a Georgia track champion in the 100 and the 200 coming out of high school.
Yeah, and we know Sark is going to want somebody who can be a burner, and he likes to have multiple guys that can be burners. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really like to have too many slow guys, but it'll be an interesting place. That wide receiver room in general for Texas to see who comes out. We've talked about it a lot. Is going to be to see which wide receivers Sark really starts to trust. So we don't know. We know that Quinn Ewers is going to, have to find his rhythm with some of these players. But then the question of who does Sark really trust as the season goes on? There isn't a sure bet of who it's going to be, but you assume Isaiah Bond is going to be at the top of that list.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that's a pretty safe assumption that Isaiah Bond will crack that top 3 in that rotation. Yeah. I think the rotation will be expanded, though. I do think when Silas Bowden comes in addition to DeAndre Moore and what he's shown so far early on in spring, and then Jonte Cook, and then Isaiah Bunn, I think you'll have potentially 4 guys in that rotation when it's all said and done, maybe even more. So Isaiah Bunn getting some love. They also ranked their top pass rushers. This I thought was interesting. In their top pass rushers, they have Texas's latest acquisition via the transfer portal, Trey Moore, ranked as the 3rd best pass rusher in the country for ESPN, ranking the top pass rushers in college football for 2024. Now, he is prolific. I mean, he had 14 sacks in 2023, 17 and a half total tackles for loss. He makes a lot of splash plays. He's getting glowing remarks and a lot of compliments from Sark early on in spring about his professionalism, about his work ethic. He doesn't look the part like the other Texas DNs, like an Ethan Burke or even a Barron Sorrell or a Colton Vasek. But I think he may be your best natural pass rusher. In addition to Anthony Hill, they also have a section on here with also receiving votes, others receiving votes, and they have Anthony Hill among the others receiving votes on here, and Barron Sorrell among the others receiving votes. So in terms of them ranking the best pass rushers in the country, Barron Sorrell getting some love, Anthony Hill getting some love, and Trey Moore ranked the 3rd best pass rusher in college football, at least by ESPN's metrics and their projections. It's just one other, I think it's basically one other opinion that, and we have the same opinion, that echoes, I think, our sentiment that defensive end room, that edge room is going to be deep. And it should be a strength for Texas this season.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you want to you really want to progress this offseason. The Trey Moore addition is huge to do it because it gives you at least an anchor now that you feel that defenses will be looking at Trey Moore, that will hopefully allow Ethan Burke a little bit more room and Barron Sorrell a little bit more room to work, that they may be thought of as not the heavier pass rusher. That can open up. Then you talk about Anthony Hill and his ability to be a pass rusher thrown in there as well, especially if the other linebackers can let him roam a little bit more. And you turn this into a real strength of a heavy rotation, because you can get into Justice Finkley and Vasek as guys that could be coming off and still have upgrades this season. We expect Colin Vasek to be somebody who starts to show some promise this season, not necessarily get a ton of reps, but you expect him to step up. Colin Simmons, another one that you expect to be able to be used in certain scenarios, that offensive play callers and offensive game planning is just going to be rough, because you're going to have to think, and for quarterbacks to look out and see who's on the field play after play and trying to figure out where guys are coming from, what their tendencies are. Offensive linemen doing the research before games to realize, I don't know who's lining up against me, and I have to do research on 4 or 5 different guys who all have different moves, who all have different skill sets to be coming at me. But they're going to come because the interior D line is going to be a step down from last year, because it's almost impossible to keep up the 2 best defensive linemen in the country to keep that standard up. However, you could push it out to the edges now, and offensive lines don't get to take a break against Texas.
Yeah, no, I'm with that. I mean, that's it. ESPN is saying they believe the defensive, at least the edge position, might be the deepest for Texas. And that's kind of the way I interpret those rankings there. One other player getting some love too. They ranked the best defensive backs overall in college football for the 2024 season. And they have Andrew Makuba getting some love. He is ranked 9th on this list, and others receiving votes. They have Jahdae Barron as among others receiving votes. So 2 places that I've said should be a strength defensively, 2 areas you should be a strength defensively for Texas next season: the edge and the secondary. And at least nationally, among the best players in the country, Texas should have representation among the top players in those areas, and that should uplift those positions to be strengths for them. And the secondary has not been a strength for Texas since Sark has been here, and they haven't had a true edge presence or edge pressure since Sark has been here. But both of those areas are expected to be strengths, at least, like I said, looking at these ESPN rankings, player rankings, that is the case.
All right, let's ask this. Is there a player that can get double-digit sacks this season for Texas? And I know there's multiple players that could, but does a Texas player get double-digit sacks?
If it's anybody, it's going to be Trey Moore. It'll be Trey Moore, Anthony Hill, but Anthony Hill doesn't play there exclusively, so Trey Moore more likely than Anthony Hill.
I mean, he's done it.
Yeah, he's done it. Last linebacker lead Texas in sacks. I believe you got to go back to Malik Jefferson did it. I believe he's the last linebacker that did it, but he had like 5 sacks or something like that.
Yeah.
So you're not talking about being prolific. I would say Trey Moore is your best bet, but they got him as the top 3 pass rusher. That's even higher than I would have him. Yeah. And I really like Trey Moore. That's really high. So they're really, really complimentary of his skill set. Real quick, Matt Miller has a 7-round mock draft. We won't go through the entire 7-round mock draft because we don't have the time. But I do want to point out that Matt Miller, who does a great job as a draft analyst, he has Texas with 3 first-round picks. He's got Byron Murphy going number 15 overall to the Colts. He's got A.D. Mitchell going 28th overall to the Bills. And he's got Xavier Worthy going last pick in the first round to the Kansas City Chiefs, especially with the Rashee Rice thing. That could still be a real possibility because they're going to need wide receiver reinforcement if he has to be suspended. But he also has, in the second round, he has the Longhorns having 2 players drafted. He's got Jay Brooks and Tavondre Sweat being drafted in the second round. And then the third round, he's got JT Sanders, Jalen Ford, and Christian Jones as third rounders. And then he's got Jay Witt as a 7th rounder. He's got Jay Witt being drafted in the 7th round.
I like that
on here. So he's got in all 3 first rounders, 2 second rounders, 3 third rounders. So he's got 9 players overall being drafted for the Longhorns. That would be a hell of an accomplishment. I did see a great interview with Jay Witt over at, I think it was Draft Network, the Draft Network, that interview with him. Great stuff. He talked about how he's seen 15. He's met with 15 or more teams in the NFL, basically half the teams he's met with in the NFL, including the Cowboys and the Texans. He talked about how Ricky Proehl, the former wide receiver in the NFL, that he's working with Ricky Proehl just about getting acclimated to the NFL, what it takes, route running, sight adjustments, things of that nature. He also talked about the culture at Texas. He said, I think our culture was contagious. He said that play for TCU perfectly captures what we're talking about. So many examples like that one when you go through the film, and that's a really good example. He said he hopes Texas keeps showing that play to future iterations of the team. This is what Texas football is. He went out there to say. He also said that at the NFL Combine, he talked about how all the players, he was told by all the teams that all of his teammates, when they were asked, hey, if there's anybody you could bring with you to the next level, who would it be? And they all said Jay Witt. I'll take Jay Witt with me, man. He's a great teammate, selfless, and, just a guy that's willing to do whatever it takes for the team. We all know that. He also went on to talk about the team now, and they're in good hands. He said it was an amazing journey. We take a lot of pride in saying that we were the group that helped turn Texas around. I was there for 5 years. I saw the ups and downs of the program, seeing it now, seeing how we all contributed to turning things around. It's so rewarding. The future is in good hands. There you go. So Jay Witt, man, everybody's rooting for Jay Witt, and Matt Miller has him actually being drafted in the 7th round. That would be quite an accomplishment for my man Jay Witt.
It would be big. It would be big.
That'd be huge. I mean, it would. Yeah, for him, all the hard work and considering all the trials and tribulations he's been through, that would be quite, like I said, that would be mind blowing. And he didn't work out at the combine. He hadn't worked out at all. He said he's gonna have a private pro day, I believe, at Texas coming up April 14th or somewhere around there. I think he said it here in this interview, but he's gonna have a private pro day. And that's where he's going to work out for scouts.
Yeah. Now, Jay Witt and Keelan Robinson are 2 guys that the better they end up in the NFL, the better it is for Sark recruiting and better for Sark preaching his culture of if you work hard, this is where you can end up if you play at Texas, because both those guys took a diminished role at points in their career for the greater good of the team. And if they both end up playing next season in the NFL, it's hard to tell. It's hard to go to Sark and say, I think I should get more receptions, and I should get more targets, and I should get more of that. Go look at these guys.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a great point, man. You're right. Those guys were selfless,
Yes.
and if they end up accomplishing their goals, that'll go a long way about proving the culture at Texas. It works. It works for everybody involved. It's a win-win. All right, we come back. We'll get into a little off-the-record conversation, fit in some topics about crazy things from the sports world and beyond. All of that and more when we continue right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the Horn. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. Aside from the traffic, Austin is a great city. One of the reasons for the traffic is people keep moving here, making it one of the fastest growing cities in America. And as our city continues to grow and thrive, so do our friends at Ironworkers Local Union 482. Many of the iconic landmarks that make this city so unique actually were built and created by the skilled craftsmanship of Ironworkers Local Union 482, like the Pennybacker Bridge and D-Care Stadium. The folks at Ironworkers Local 482 don't go to the office. They are the ones who actually build it. So if you're thinking about an exciting employment opportunity, or maybe you want a refreshing career change, you can become a member of Ironworkers Local 482. Right now, they're hiring over 3,000 people for a huge project right here in Central Texas. They're offering competitive wages, competitive benefits, and a pension plan. They even offer training for unskilled labor through their apprenticeship program. So become a member of Ironworkers Local 482 and take pride in the type of teamwork and craftsmanship that help shape the future of this great city. Maximize your potential today and accept the challenge of becoming the best version of yourself by applying online at ironworkers482.org. That's ironworkers482.org. All right. How about this story? Um, Conjoined twins Abby and Brittany Hensel, who skyrocketed to fame going on Oprah, and they had a reality TV show on TLC. They've gotten married. Public records show that Abby married Army veteran Josh Bowling in Minnesota, and they are conjoined twins. Isn't that amazing?
Only one of them got married, though, right?
Yeah, I think technically only one of them got married, but basically, isn't the other one basically married though? Because they're still conjoined.
That is the most official third wheel of all time.
That is right. So that's what I'm saying. How can one be married? They said but the nuptials have sparked questions. Everybody has a lot of questions about it. I imagine. Just wanted to know it, man. How does it work with the other sister who is not married or in love with this guy, or maybe she is? I don't know.
I'll tell you this: if I'm looking for someone to endorse my noise canceling headphones, I'm hiring the other girl. That's who I'm hiring.
Oh man, well done. Well done. I mean, you kept it decent. You kept it PG-13 too. You could have went. I think you could have went right off the cliff. No, man, you kept it clean. You kept it PG-13. Well done there, Patrick. Well done, sir. That's just fantastic. That's another question I would have. Yes, that is a great question. But yeah, apparently it is a real story. A lot of America has questions now about their lifestyle and how they just go through everyday activities as a married couple now, because it's a throuple technically, because they are conjoined twins who are still, and yet Abby is the only one that's married and not Brittany. But Brittany's alone. She's there. Brittany's
I do feel bad for Brittany that's got to be a pretty difficult one. You were already trying to date in a world where you were a conjoined twin. And now you were trying to date in a world where you're a conjoined twin, plus your sister's married to another dude.
But she was on all the dates. Like, she was there. I get that,
but that's what I'm saying. But if she's like, well, my brain says that I'm not into this guy, I'm into this guy over here. Well, now you got to convince that guy, hey, I know it's kind of weird, but they're a couple, we're a couple.
Hey, every couple is weird, man. Trust
me. Yeah, everybody's got their thing.
Every couple is got their own strange little universe going. And here's another example of it. Yeah, a lot of questions. Like I said, I don't want to ask all the questions on there, but a lot of questions about that. All right, there you go. That's our off the record. We got to stop while we're ahead here, because I think we should have just left on your joke, like George Costanza style. Just left on top right there. That would have been the way to go. All right, we come right back. We got one more hour left of the show. We come back. We'll get into some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We got proof that the Cowboys are indeed America's team, and it may disgust you and sicken you, but we do have proof of it. And the Cowboys may have miscalculated the market for another position. We'll get into that as well in Rod's rant of the day. On the other side, we also will have another Horn headlines. Lots to get into. We are not done yet. Right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis. I'm lifetime logo Rod Davis, coming right back on the Horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast, a top of the charts Tuesday. That's when my co-host, the Idealionaire Patrick Davis, plays jams that reached the top of the Billboard charts on this day in history. Oh man, Little Rich Girl from Hall & Oates. Well done.
Yeah, some good
That's
stuff.
my favorite. Oh, that's good. That's soul enriching stuff right there, man. That's just good. I got that. I got plenty of Hall & Oates, but that's one of my favorite jams right there. That's one of my favorite Hall & Oates jams, and they got a few of them out there. That's why I love the Top of the Charts Tuesday. Very eclectic mix, and I always learn something new, but it's always a really, really good mix with my man Patrick Davis. We appreciate all of his musical knowledge. We also appreciate the Big Fat Poll of the Day, which he also does. And Patrick, let the folks know out there what the Big Fat Poll of the Day is, and I believe it's already posted on the Horn Twitter account too.
Yes, it is posted on the Horn Twitter account. The poll of the day, you can hit us up on X, on Twitter at the Horn ATX, or on the text line 512-447-3776. Which coach is the easiest to root against? It was Kim Mulkey, watching her last night and really feeling no sympathy towards her losing a game. You just say, it's fine. I have no problem rooting against her. Rod brought up the great example of Deion Sanders, someone that at points pretty much ask you to root against him, trying to be divisive. Lincoln Riley is somebody who's, even though he left Oklahoma and you say, well, he's gone from Oklahoma, maybe we wouldn't hate him as much. And then he goes and then posts picture of dried out brisket and
I don't know what that was.
And
he was bragging about it too. Yeah. Wasn't he trying to show it off?
And you just say, no, thank you. No, thank you.
Come on, man. Do you know anything about brisket? That is just, I still can't believe he tweeted. I thought he was trolling everybody with that brisket.
We all did.
No?
And you're like, if I was a parent, my recruit's not going there.
Man, not even know to identify a good brisket. There you go. So that is the Big Fat Poll today. Good stuff. It's a good discussion there about what coach makes it easiest to root against them. And yeah, Kim Mulkey right now leading. And may just be recency bias, but Kim Mulkey makes it easy. The way she dresses, she is unapologetic about her opinions. She takes hard stances on controversial topics. And she's, like I said, she's cocky, brash, arrogant. That also, rubs people the wrong way. And that's what she does. And she does it really well. She's a damn good basketball coach too. I think part of it is you got to be good at, Cliff Kingsbury is one of the only examples of someone who really wasn't good, but still you rooted against him because you couldn't understand how he could fail and be a bad coach and get fired at Texas Tech and yet end up being hired as a head coach in the NFL. He just has a way, the football gods just have a way of rewarding Cliff Kingsbury, even when he's incompetent or inept. He's just good looking and dating Instagram models, getting hired by USC. Whatever. Remember he went to USC for a while for an OC job and then left because he got another job. Remember he had that little, I think it was like a week, maybe 2 weeks he was at USC, supposed to be the OC, and decided, I got a better job. There's a better job available. Yeah. There's always a better job available for Cliff Kingsbury.
And now
he gets fired.
Now he's in Washington.
Yeah, see, I don't know. That's maybe now finally it catches up with Cliff. He's there in Washington, but now they got new ownership, so he's not there with the terrible ownership anymore.
If it was Dan Snyder, then that would be catching up to him. But it's new ownership, so we don't know yet.
We don't know yet. He might end up getting a great quarterback, right?
Yeah.
That top, what are number 3?
They're number two.
Number two in the
Patriots
draft.
number 3.
Patriots are number 3. Yeah. As a matter of fact, we got a story that we'll get to here, NFL related, about the NFL draft. We'll do that, and we'll talk Cowboys here in a second. So before we get started with all those topics, let's get into the Horn headlines really quickly. Have my man Patrick inform us and educate us about the big headlines of the day. And then we'll come back, talk some NFL, talk some Cowboys, tell you why they are America's team. At least we have proof of it now. And then we'll also talk about how the Cowboys may have just slightly miscalculated the market on the quarterback position. We'll get into that. But first, let's do the Horn headlines with my man Patrick Davis.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. The women's Final Four is set after Caitlin Clark and Iowa were able to top LSU 94-87. Clark scored 41 points, hitting 9 threes to get the win over the team that beat them for the championship a year ago. And on the other side of the bracket, UConn beat USC 80-73 to reach their record 24th Final Four as a school. With NC State, this is the first time two universities have reached the Final Four in both men's and women's basketball in the same season. Texas baseball is in action tonight against Abilene Christian, a team who has never beaten the Longhorns. The Horns will look to rely on their hot bats to get a win over a team who has had suspect pitching this season. In the NBA, the Phoenix Suns topped the Pelicans 124-111, with Devin Booker putting up 52 points and 9 assists. The New Orleans loss helps the Mavericks gain a little breathing room in the standings as they will take on the Warriors tonight in their push for the 4 seed in the West. Texas men's basketball has their first player into the transfer portal as redshirt sophomore Gavin Perryman announced his plans to be a grad transfer this offseason. Perryman walked on to Texas in 2021 and has appeared in 11 games in his 2 seasons on the team. And in the NBA, Roniel Blanco, in the MLB, Roniel Blanco powered the Astros to their first win of the season, pitching the first no-hitter of the MLB season against the Blue Jays. The 30-year-old Blanco was the only pitching in his 8th career start when he entered the record books with the Astros' 17th no-hitter in team history. And the Rangers continued their hot start as they beat the Rays 9-3, with Adolis Garcia getting his 100th career home run in the win. The Rangers will send Andrew Haney to the mound today, with pregame starting at 5:15 right here on the Horn. And that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. A couple of things I want to get into here. Daniel Jeremiah's latest mock draft, he is predicting that there are going to be a record 4 quarterbacks going in the first 4 picks of the draft. He's got we just talked about Washington drafting second. He's got Washington taking Drake May with the 2nd overall pick. Of course, everybody's got Caleb Williams going 1st overall. He's got Jaden Daniels, LSU quarterback, going to the Patriots 3rd overall. And he's got JJ McCarthy going to the Vikings. He's got the Vikings trading up that extra 1st-round pick they acquired with the Texans. They're trading up to get their quarterback with the 4th overall pick. That would make history because there have only been 3 instances in which quarterbacks have been selected with each of the first 3 picks. There's never been a year in which 4 straight quarterbacks have been taken to begin the NFL draft, but this could be the year, and we know everything's becoming more and more quarterback centric. Those other 3 years where a quarterback was taken in the first 3 picks of the NFL draft overall, 2021, you had Trevor Lawrence, you had Zach Wilson, and Trey Lance. Matter of fact, we'll talk about Trey Lance here in just a second, but he's been traded. Zach Wilson has been given permission to seek a trade. Nobody wants Zach Wilson. And then you have Trevor Lawrence, the one that is working out among that group. And then in 1999, you have Tim Couch was the first off the board in 99, then Donovan McNabb, and then I believe it's Achilles Smith was 3rd overall. And then in 1971, you had Jim Plunkett was the top pick, then Archie Manning, then you had Dan Pastorini to the Houston Oilers. Hey, love your blue. And those have been your 1, 2, 3. We've never had 1, 2, 3, 4 all go with a quarterback with the first 4 picks in the NFL draft. And Daniel Jeremiah believes there's a chance. And I can see it. Only reason I can see it happening because we know the top 3 picks are going to be quarterbacks, but there's going to be a team desperate enough to trade into that top 5 because they know their quarterback might be gone by then, the quarterback they want, if they need a quarterback in this class. And that's why it could happen. And Minnesota could be that team that decides, now I'm going up to get my guy.
And that's going to be the question, because there's really, I don't know how much competition there's going to be. So if we say the Patriots are staying at 3, then that's another quarterback off there, which the Patriots I still think may trade out of that 3 spot and not want to go with Drake May say we have way too many problems to fix right now. Let's not draft a quarterback. Let's go get some other guys, build up this team. We could piecemeal a quarterback situation together for a year or 2 and try and rebuild. But then your only other competition is Denver and the Raiders that really, really need a quarterback and would trade up to get him. The Giants are in that conversation, but I don't think the Giants move up for a quarterback. I don't know if they leverage. I don't know if they leverage more of their future when they still have Daniel Jones on the book. So they'll probably stay at what I believe they're 10 or 11. So if you say 10 or 11 is where you really need to get ahead of before the Giants pick, I don't know if you need to move up to 4 to get it. Now, the Cardinals may be willing to make the trade. They were willing to make the trade last year with the Texans. So they may be the team that's most willing to trade down. But I don't know if it depends on what they're asking for it, because it feels like you could trade into that 9 spot and still get a quarterback ahead of the Giants and still get JJ McCarthy if you really wanted him. I don't know if the Broncos may be your main competition. I don't feel the Raiders are going to trade up to get a guy either. They don't seem to be, there's no rumors of them trading up to go get their guy either. So the only team that we've heard any rumors about is Sean Payton, that he likes JJ McCarthy, and whether that's true
JJ.
or he's sending out a smokescreen because he likes somebody else more, and he just wants JJ McCarthy to go off the board before he goes in there because he doesn't care about that. That's really your only other real competition. So it's going to depend on. I just don't necessarily see somebody leveraging that much, because I don't know. I feel like the value of that pick, because it is the best player other than a quarterback in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
If you take that number 4 spot, I feel that's more valuable than trying to trade, 2 first rounders and maybe some other stuff to move up into 4 to take the 4th best quarterback in the draft. And compete with basically Denver. Basically, Denver is who you're competing with at that spot.
Yeah, unless some other team really has a man crush on one of the, those quarterbacks that's expected to be drafted outside that top 3, which is, like you said, you're looking at JJ McCarthy, or if you love Michael Penix that much. And, but I'm with you. I don't necessarily believe that a team is going to take that kind of risk. But like I said, if they really like JJ McCarthy that much and believe all the hype that he could be the best quarterback in this draft class, then yeah, I mean, it's worth it if it works. We talked about this with Nick Caserio. Oh, it's worth it if it works.
Yeah.
Him trading back into the first round to go get, there's a draft Will Anderson and CJ Stroud in the first round last year, and all the draft capital he gave up. If it worked, it was a great trade. If it didn't, he gave up way too much. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
All right. And right now, looking like it was a great trade. Nobody's talking about how much Nick Caserio gave up. Nobody gives a damn about how much draft capital he gave up. No, because CJ Stroud hit and Will Anderson hit. That's it. Nobody's even mentioned draft capital ever again after those 2 guys started performing well. So if you hit, it don't matter how much you gave up. Nobody will ever talk about it again.
No,
but you got to make sure you hit, though.
And for the Vikings, that dual-edged sword with Justin Jefferson, you just invested in drafting Jordan Addison the year before. You got your tight end now in Hockenson. Like, you made a lot of investments for weapons for the quarterback. Sam Darnold's your quarterback now that Kirk Cousins left. So I can get you really wanting to go out and get a quarterback. But again, if you give up future pick and you give up all this stuff to go get JJ McCarthy and it misses, well, you're done. Justin Jefferson's gone. Why would he stay? You don't have a quarterback, and you traded away the picks you would have to get a quarterback.
Yep. No, I mean, honestly, like I said, unless you're the 49ers and you stumble upon a Brock Purdy, because they're supposed to be there too. The 49ers literally just did that with Trey Lance, and it screwed up, didn't work out, and they stumbled upon Brock Purdy, which is why you should always be drafting quarterbacks. Don't ever stop. Don't ever stop. You got to, honestly, you treat it like crypto. What do they always say about crypto? If crypto's good, buy more crypto. If crypto's bad, buy more crypto. Like, that's the quarterback market. If it's going well for you, draft and acquire more quarterbacks. If it's going bad for you, draft and acquire more quarterbacks. That is the advice I give to you. And then trust me, it's either going to work out or it ain't, but you definitely going to need to be in that quarterback market, no doubt. All right, good stuff there. Let's get into this Cowboys conversation just really quickly. I saw an awful announcing article, and they do a good job kind of keeping up with the broadcasting element of major sports. And they tracked, kind of an experiment. They went and tracked the amount of mentions major sports topics get on the daytime sports talk shows, ESPN and Fox Sports. And actually, I got FS1 on in the background. I usually keep ESPN on in the background, but only in the background. So breaking news, we can, obviously mention it on the show, that kind of stuff. But I don't usually watch them, but they went and tracked them from March 25th to March 29th. So you got 5 days of them tracking ESPN and FS1 to find out how often they mention certain relevant topics in sports. And the Cowboys are one of these. Now, it was actually kind of a survey that was inspired by the Cowboys. I've always said Cowboys are the number one TV star, the number one TV show in America. The number one TV show is NFL. The number one TV star, the Dallas Cowboys. So it really started there, and they went and tracked how often those broadcast shows, those TV shows, morning TV shows, talked about the Cowboys. How many times they mentioned Cowboys, Dak, and Jerry Jones. All right, those three terms. They wouldn't track those, and he also compared it to other topical sports headlines and celebrity athletes like LeBron and Caitlin Clark and Patrick Mahomes and Draymond Green and UConn and Caleb Williams and opening day, because it was right before opening day of Major League Baseball. So I just wanted to see, where the coverage, how the coverage compares, topic to topic, and the Cowboys obviously being the centerpiece of that. And what they found was pretty mind blowing. Well, I think it actually just kind of affirms and confirms what we already know. The Cowboys mentions by network on FS1. They did three terms: Cowboys, Dak, and Jerry Jones. The Cowboys mentions on Fox Sports, 106 of them in that 5-day window. On ESPN, it was 38 Cowboys mentions by network. Dak mentions 103 on Fox Sports, 35 on ESPN. Jerry Jones mentions 89 on Fox Sports, 19 on ESPN. Total mentions by network in that 5-day window, 298 total mentions of the Cowboys, Dak, or Jerry Jones on FS1 Fox Sports in that 5-day window. For ESPN, it was 92. And if you go look at that compared to other sports topics or other sports celebrity mentions total on Fox Sports, and 47 mentions in that time span. Caitlin Clark only had 6 Fox Sports mentions and 40 on ESPN that time span. Patrick Mahomes had 60 on Fox Sports, 40 on ESPN in that 5-day window. Draymond Green, 51 on Fox Sports, 58 on ESPN. UConn, and you could have been talking about the men or the women, 33 on Fox Sports, 64 on ESPN. Caleb Williams, 71 on Fox Sports, 61 on ESPN in that 5-day window. Opening day of Major League Baseball, 13 mentions on Fox Sports and 29 on ESPN. So far and away, Patrick, when you start looking at what is talked about on the morning sports talk shows on the two major networks, the Cowboys, even in the offseason, no football season, basically everything else going on. You got March Madness happening. You got opening day of Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL seasons happening. A lot of other topics going on. They're still talking more Cowboys than they do any other sports topic. And this is in the off season. Can you imagine what happens during the season? That's what Jerry Jones likes. That's what keeps the Cowboys relevant. It also keeps the cash machines, running, because they're always getting free media. There's probably no sports entity in the country, and I don't even know in the world, who gets more free publicity and free media than the Dallas Cowboys, just based on what I just talked about. And that's not even including sports radio like us. That's just to talk about the two major network and their daytime, or at least morning sports talk shows.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it is. If you don't watch sports, or you don't watch football, or you came from another country and you saw how much they talk about Fox Sports, or about the Cowboys, if you saw how much of that, then it would be, you would think, well, they must be the best team that's ever played football.
They must be really good.
These guys must have a crazy dynasty. And then they go, oh, no, they're actually talking about firing everybody because they're not winning enough. Okay. Didn't see that coming, but that
is so true.
You would feel that way just because it has to, because you named off the other people. You're like, well, they talked about Caitlin Clark because she's the best player in women's basketball. They talk about LeBron James because he's the greatest player of a generation. And you talk about all those other pieces.
Mahomes.
Exactly, Mahomes. You go, the Grace, the people they're calling the baby goats, and all these people in the GOAT conversation. And then they're like, the Cowboys, it's been a while.
That's a great point, because you're right. Everybody else has to earn those headlines. They got to earn to be in that conversation or be talked about. But yeah, not the Cowboys. The Cowboys are just, like I said, they're just that polarized. America loves the Cowboys and loves to hate the Cowboys. Jerry Jones knows that. And maybe Jerry Jones is tired of it too. Maybe that's why Jerry Jones is like, no, everybody's in a contract here. I'm tired of, I know he's not tired. I know. He's the one that feeds the beast here.
Yeah,
He's the
Jerry
one
Jones is the one who commissioned this report. We know this.
He wanted to know how often do they mention us on them shows. Somebody figure it out for me. You're right about that. Yeah, so there you go. The Cowboys are indeed America's team, but for all the wrong reasons. And not the America that we're really proud of. They're like the America's team of the trashy reality TV show America that we really are like, yeah, that's America too, but not necessarily that proud of.
Are they the Honey Boo Boo of?
Yes, that's exactly right. They're the naked and afraid of America, of American sports, pretty much. All right, let's get to you know what? We got the round of the day. You know what? It's Cowboys, but I think we can fit it in. Let's fit it in. Let's do the Raj round of the day right here and talk a little Cowboys. All right, now as just a critique of the Cowboys. I'm not trying to criticize it, just a critique because actually I like this move initially, but now in retrospect, I wonder if the Cowboys could have squeezed a little bit more value out of this acquisition. If they could have been able to acquire more value in this move. So the Trey Lance move, which I liked it at the time. I still like it now. At the time, one of the reasons I really liked it. First of all, the Cowboys have drafted the fewest quarterbacks in the NFL since 1999. So they need to be acquiring more quarterbacks, period. It's just a healthy organizational habit to have. And they acquired Trey Lance, which is great value. The guy was drafted in the top 3. And you got him essentially for a 4th-round pick. And in an NFL where more and more quarterbacks are becoming mobile, and they have not only functional mobility, but a weaponized mobility. All right, they can actually be dual threat weapons. Teams that don't have a quarterback like that on their roster to practice against, to actually give them a really good practice picture to work on the scout team, they're at a huge disadvantage because the first time they see these really elite dual threat quarterbacks is in the game. And it can be shocking to see that in the game and take you a while to adapt and acclimate to it. Maybe a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half. That's in the NFL, that can be too long. Right? You can end up being, down double digits and out of a game at that point. So I've always said that everybody in the NFL should keep a dual threat quarterback on their roster just to give them a good picture on scout team. So I liked it from that perspective. I liked it just to have a developmental project at quarterback. But now looking back in retrospect, we've seen some 1st-round quarterbacks who have been traded recently. To give us a bit of a comparable sample size to what the Cowboys did. Now, they traded Trey Lance for a 4th-round pick, which I think is good value for a guy that was drafted top 3 overall for the Cowboys, and I liked it. But Mac Jones recently was traded, and he was traded for a 6th-round pick from New England to Jacksonville. Kenny Pickett was recently traded, 1st-round quarterback, traded for a 3rd-round pick, but Philadelphia got a 4th-round pick in exchange. So there was, some exchange of value there. And he was traded from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. Justin Fields was traded from Chicago to Pittsburgh, and that was a 6th-round pick. Now, it is conditional that if Justin Fields ends up being basically their starting quarterback for most of the season, most of the snaps, and most of the reps, then it becomes a 4th-round pick. So it goes from being a 6th to a 4th-round pick if he gives you the majority of the starting reps. So looking back now at the 4th-round pick for the Cowboys, like I said, I still like the deal. I don't know if I love the deal. And it still remains to be seen what they're going to do with Trey Lance. He just got a roster bonus, so we don't even know what they're going to do with him. But considering what the quarterbacks went for, 1st-round quarterbacks, like I said, he was drafted higher, so maybe you're arguing he has more value overall, so you have to give up more to get him. But Cowboys probably should have been trying to get him for maybe a 5th-round pick or a 6th-round pick, and you say, man, that's a negligible difference. It is. But when you start adding up all of the acquisitions, all right, for the Cowboys over time, whether they be releasing a guy, cutting a guy, signing a guy, trading for a player, drafting a player. What you ultimately want is for all those guys to outperform their contracts. And that's your value. That's the value you acquire. Because that means, oh man, I got this guy at a bargain. He's outperforming the deal. I signed a really good deal for the team because he's a great player. That's why the draft is important, because all those guys, Micah Parsons and CD Lamb, they're all outperforming their contract. You had Dak Prescott, who was rookie of the year as a 4th round pick, outperforming his draft status, outperforming his contract. That makes you a great talent evaluator and a great front office exec. And I can't say that for Trey Lance right now. I can't say that he's out, because he's not.
Yeah.
You acquired him for a 4th round pick. You picked up the roster bonus, and he's essentially your 3rd string quarterback. Now, those other guys, hell, Mac Jones is going to be the backup immediately for Jacksonville. And we've seen more backups and more 3rd string quarterbacks play in the last 2 years than ever before in the NFL. So maybe that could be Trey Lance. But, I think those guys gave up less to get those quarterbacks, and those quarterbacks argue Justin Fields is about to compete for a starting spot with that team. So you could argue that they're going to get more return on that investment, and it wasn't as big of an investment. So that's what you want. And over time, all of those, that value, it adds up over time. And that's how you end up being in the red or the black pretty much as an organization in terms of your talent acquisition and your value that you're trying to acquire. And the Cowboys, you could argue, this is another place where they might have miscalculated the market and overpaid for Trey Lance when they didn't have to.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing with Trey Lance, because he's not a backup, he's 3rd string. Like he's not even your 2nd string quarterback. He falls into this weird category for me, which you as of right now overpaid for him because he's not playing, and you don't know if he's even going to suit up and what he could ever do for you. You've kept him on the roster now for another, you're not letting him go. You're doubling down on it, which you have to do. Yep. I think you have to do that. But you're basically drafting him as either this guy is a 4th round pick for somebody who starts for the Dallas Cowboys, or a 4th round pick for someone who never takes a snap for the Dallas Cowboys. It feels like that is the 2 options right now for Trey Lance, because I don't know if he gets in as a backup next year. As long as Cooper Rush is still on the roster, I don't think Cooper Rush ever falls to number 3. And now Trey Lance maybe comes in if Dak Prescott suffers 6-week injury and you say, well, Cooper Rush is only going to play 2 weeks, and then we got to figure out something else because Cooper is not going to be able to keep winning us games.
That's true.
Then maybe he gets in that way, but it really feels like it's either going to be a big hit because he turns out to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, and you got a starter for a 4th, which is a great pickup, or you trade a 4th round pick for a guy that you tried out and it didn't work out, so it's a complete miss. It doesn't feel like for a backup quarterback, they overpaid and they misjudged. But I'm not sure Trey Lance is ever going to be just a backup quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. And if you were going to, and if he was going to be a backup quarterback for them next year, and you want to keep him in that way, he's a free agent after this year. You could have just signed him.
And it won't be I don't think it'll be a real competitive market for Trey Lance if he became a free agent. I don't know if a lot of teams will be out there trying to give up a lot to get him. That's a great point about him being a 3rd string quarterback. Actually, I didn't think about that because you're right about that. Cooper Rush actually is the backup quarterback for them. And I think it's healthy to keep a 3rd string quarterback, but what are you giving up and what are you paying for that 3rd string quarterback is the question. So much like they misread and miscalculated the wide receiver market when they traded Amari Cooper for a 5th round pick and exchanged 6th round picks with the Browns. And then we found out later guys like AJ Brown went for a 1st and a 3rd, and Devontae Adams, who, by the way, Amari Cooper was younger than, he was younger than Tyreek Hill too, went for a 1st and a 2nd. Tyreek Hill went for a 1, 2, a 4, and a 6. And you traded Amari Cooper away for beans, for pennies on the dollar. That I don't give a damn if there is something personal. You don't like them. You got to get more value in return than that. That was a Bill O'Brien move. That was worse than a Bill O'Brien move, actually.
It was worse. That's what I say. It's my analogy that I've always said is for Amari Cooper, the Cowboys put the couch out on the curb and then went online and said, or best offer.
And the Browns just drove up in that truck and was like, we'll throw you some change. Yeah, we'll take it. But
we've already loaded it. We can't ask for something now.
But they felt bad for him, and they tossed you a couple of dollers.
Yeah, we'll give you a 5th. I'll tell you what, we'll give you a 5th round pick if you make sure no one takes it in the 8 minutes until we get to your house to come pick it up. We'll give you $5 for it.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, brother. That's a great analogy. All right, we come back. We'll get into Brian Windhorst has some audio he's actually giving some props to Wemby and the Spurs. He's got a prediction about the San Antonio Spurs. I want to see what my man Patrick thinks about this, and we'll get ready to talk a little NBA on the other side. All that and more right here on the Rodcast. This is right here on the Horn, featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, coming right back. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. Let me tell you about Dr. Greg Eckert and his fantastic team. I'm a huge fan of Dr. U, and he's a friend, so I call him Dr. U, but you can call him Dr. Eckert, Dr. U, and Dr. U is appropriate. Not only does his last name begin with U, but he's all about you. He's all about the patient, making sure you get the best quality dental care available. And it doesn't matter what your dental needs are. It can be something as simple as a checkup or as simple as a cleaning, or it can be very complicated, like me, when I went in and had to have 4 of my wisdom teeth removed, all of them removed. And it was a pretty dire situation. Could have been disastrous, but because of Dr. U, Dr. Greg Eckert, and his all-star team, I have the best quality dental care that you could get. And my dental health right now, dental hygiene are better than ever. I was back to work within 2 days of having the oral surgery. And now my teeth feel better than ever thanks to Dr. U. So it could be something dire, disastrous potentially, or it can be something simple. General dentistry, teeth whitening, dentures, porcelain crowns, veneers, dental implants, full mouth reconstruction, even root canal therapy, you name it, whatever it is, you'll get the best quality dental care available with Dr. Greg Eckert and his great team. And he also is someone he has a lot of intellectual curiosity. So he's always on the cutting edge. The technological advances in general dentistry. Every time I go there, there's some type of new advancement that is really increasing and really making sure that you get the best quality dental care out there. And right now, he has the ability to give you a brand new smile in just one day, permanently secured to your dental implants. No time spent without teeth. You'll eat freely without pain or discomfort. And right now, he can do that for you. A lifelike permanent solution. So if you've been told your teeth need to be replaced, don't panic. Don't freak out. Just call Dr. U today to learn about this revolutionary alternative to dentures. It's a brand new smile in just one day. A complimentary consultation, which means you got nothing to lose but everything to gain, because he understands that a confident smile can truly change your life, and he wants to change your life for the better. So give him a call, 512-345-3166. That's 512-345-3166, or visit dreckert.com, drueckert.com. Welcome back to the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis, the Idealionaire. He comes up with all the musically themed days of the week, and it is the top of the charts Tuesday. That's when Patrick plays jams that reach the top of the Billboard charts on this day in history. And I saw the sign. Who sings this song? Who sung this song?
Ace of Base.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a name I hadn't heard in a while. Ace of Base. There you go.
Yeah, early
I know
90s,
the song very well.
Early
Yeah,
90s.
we jammed this. Did we used to jam this? We used to jam this, huh?
I don't know. I mean, we were young men. We were boys back then.
So I don't know if I was just saying, like, it reached the top of the Billboard chart, so we were obviously enjoying
yeah,
it.
I was like 9 or 10. I can't imagine at 9 or 10 this was really what I was jamming. But
what'd you say? What year it came out?
Yeah, I believe 93.
So I was a teenager, man, 13. So I imagine I was hanging out with some ladies who were probably jamming that damn song or somewhere around there. There you go. Top of the charts too. This is why I love it. I always find out something new about myself a lot of the times too. Okay, let's get into this Brian Windhorst audio here because I want to be able to get your thoughts on it. He's on his Hoop Collector podcast. I've been listening to more of it. They actually do a really good job, and he's been giving some props to the San Antonio Spurs lately. Well, I guess maybe more to Victor Wembanyama. He was remarking about Draymond Green's comments. Draymond Green, recently when asked about playing the Spurs in their last game against Golden State, he was very complimentary of Victor Wembanyama, and that's how Brian Windhorst starts. This piece of audio is talking about Draymond Green's statement on Victor, and then he makes his own. Here is Brian Windhorst. There you go. You are our resident Spurs fan and NBA connoisseur, if you will, Patrick. What are your thoughts? Our players going to be flocking down to San Antonio to team up with Wemby? And what kind of players will those players be? I mean, skill set wise, in terms of compatibility with Wemby.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's. First of all, the free agency class this year is not great. It's not like there's going to be a ton of free agents. More and more teams are trying to keep guys in house and getting, extensions done. The CBA's done in a way that you can usually make more money staying where you're at than leaving. So unless you are a top guy and you really want out, it's a lot harder for you to get out of your contract, and you probably aren't going to go risk it in free agency. So there's not necessarily a lot of guys in free agency that can even make the choice that will come down and make the Spurs immediate contenders next year. There's guys like DeMar DeRozan is an example of a guy who's a little bit older, has been there before, could come in. It would definitely be an upgrade for the Spurs, but it doesn't really necessarily get them that much further and that much closer to where you want to go. So, and then you look into guys that'll be restricted free agents, like how Austin Reeves was, where a lot of people are mad the Spurs didn't go out and try and get Austin Reeves. The reality was they knew the the Lakers are going to match whatever they did. And, you don't necessarily want to put out restricted offers and basically shut yourself down in free agency while you wait for that response from the other team. So there's reasons why it'll be a little bit harder. But I do think there's going to be players that maybe try and, behind the scenes, maybe say, I'm not staying here. Why don't you move on? If we're not winning right now, maybe it's the best if we could change ways. I'll throw it a name, and I have no idea. This is not any rumor or anything else, but it just kind of fits into that mold of a player. Is like a Mikal Bridges, who's 27 years old. He's in the second year of a 4-year deal right now. It's a $90 million 4-year deal. So it's not huge money for a pretty good player. But it's also, he'll be wanting another contract in a couple of years. If he's in Brooklyn and says, we're not getting where we need to be, you guys need more help rebuilding. The Spurs have some picks, maybe get a young player from them and some picks, and you send me down there, I'll re-sign in a couple of years down there. That's the type of player. He fits into what they would play well with Wemby as a guy who can score, can be a facilitator, also really good defender, plays both ways on the court, lengthy, fits in that small forward role. A guy like that would be somebody that the Spurs maybe trying to go into. And maybe, we talked about CJ Stroud yesterday going and talking to these players. Victor Wembanyama, everybody wants to be talking to him too, because
That's
even
true.
if they're not they have no intention of ever coming to the city of San Antonio. They know that Victor Wembanyama could be a free agent one day, and they'll want to play him to come wherever they are. So everyone's trying to build these relationships now. Anyway, you're all stars, you're all top players, you're all going to be at the biggest functions for NBA. So those guys, those relationships, and maybe Wembanyama tries to recruit somebody through that channel to say, go in, ask for a trade. And we had someone on the text line earlier talk about guys like Kevin Durant. Those are a little bit harder because then you're talking about a guy who's in his mid 30s, but he's making a ton of money. And you say those guys are making 45, 50 million and they're not free agents. And the Spurs, just to make the cap room work and what you trade to get him back and how much cap space they take up when you're trying to build a team, it's probably not the best solution and probably not the route they would go. You'd love to have a Kevin Durant play there, but just in building a team, Wemby and Kevin Durant and this Spurs team probably doesn't win you a championship. So you don't necessarily want to go put all your eggs in that basket. It's why they didn't want to make the Dame Lillard trade when people are mad at them for not making that trade. But in reality, I think there's more guys, if you look around teams that are maybe underperforming a little bit and may look at the Spurs draft capital and one of their younger players that has a few more years on their contract and they may be able to get them cheaper, that may be a route they may look at this offseason rather than free agency.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I mean, I can't wait to see who they team up with Wemby and who they start building around them. That's going to be an exciting, I think, next couple of years. So they'll need to do it in the draft. But like you said, free agency, I think it's going to be interesting to see exactly who can, at least who Wemby attracts to San Antonio, because they haven't been known for having a lot of big time free agents. That may change now with Wemby in town. All right. Thanks. Good stuff there from my man Patrick. We come back, we'll wrap it up, put it in the oven, and we'll play a little bit of Who Said That coming right back. This is the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. We all love the city of Austin. Aside from the traffic, it's a fantastic city. And the reason the traffic is bad is because more and more people want to move here. They want to call it home. And as the city continues to grow and thrive, so do our friends over at Ironworkers Local Union 482. Many of the iconic landmarks that we love and appreciate in this city that make it so unique were actually built and constructed and created by the skilled craftsmanship of Ironworkers Local Union 482, like the Pennybacker Bridge and DKR Stadium. The folks over at Ironworkers Local 42 don't just go to the office, they're the ones who build it. So if you're thinking about refreshing career change, or maybe you want an exciting employment opportunity, you can become a valued member of this prestigious organization, Ironworkers Local Union 482. And right now they're hiring over 3,000 people for a huge project right here in Central Texas. They're offering competitive wages, competitive benefits, and a pension plan. They even offer training for unskilled labor through their apprenticeship program. Become a member of Ironworkers Local 482 and take pride in the type of teamwork and craftsmanship that help shape the future of our city. Maximize your potential and accept the challenge of becoming the best version of yourself by going online today to apply at ironworkers482.org. That's ironworkers482.org. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. My man Patrick Davis, the co-host and idealionaire of the Rodcast. He comes up with the musically themed days of the week, and today is Top of the Charts Tuesday when he plays jams that reach the top of the Billboard charts on this day in history. Who is this? Who is this?
I get 2005. Any guesses?
It's not Shaggy, is it?
It is not Shaggy.
It's not Shaggy. Something Paul.
Sean Paul.
Sean Paul. I knew it was something Paul. I'm getting too old. I knew it was something Paul. Yeah. He had his day. He had his day.
He had his day.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's before we get out of here and get done, we always play Who Said That. We play audio clips, and you at home can play along. And based on the clip we play, hopefully you can figure out who said that.
most badass person you've ever coached in football?
It might be too soon, but like Aaron Jones is he's a badass football player.
Oh, wow.
So, but yeah, for a guy that's 190 pounds and just the beating that the runners take in general, I mean, it's like a car crash every time they get tackled. So I think honestly, just his ability to come back from, I thought he shredded his knee earlier this year when we were playing the Chargers, and his ability to, I still don't know how he didn't get severely injured on that play, but his ability to come back later in the year and what he was able to do, I would say that was pretty badass.
Cowboys would agree because he lit up the Cowboys and ran downhill on them. That would be Matt LaFleur, the Packers head coach, talking about who's the most badass football players ever coached. That would be Aaron Jones. So there you go. Thank you, Patrick, for the who said it. And thank you for everything today. You've done a great job. As always, you're the real MVP. We appreciate your efforts and your creativity. All the folks out there listening, we appreciate you, all your participation on the text line. You're the most important part of this show. So thank you guys for joining us each and every morning. Tomorrow we'll be back, same time, same channel. Remember, the revolution will not be televised. We're talking about it right here on the Rodcast. Everybody enjoy the rest of your evening. Be kind to one another. We love you. We mean that. In the meantime, peace. Hook 'em.